Welcome to the Goffstown School Board meeting. I call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. We can all rise and say the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so tonight we're going to finish up budget reviews, but before that we have a few items to do, but I'm going to first open to public comment, and I don't see any tonight. So the first is the high school is proposing a lunch discussion. We do have the information in our packet. Frank or Kim, are you ready to do that now, or you want to do the class first?
Perfect.
You're good?
We're good.
All right, well, come on up.
So as Mrs. McCann is making her way up, the board has an overview of this, so we'll ask Mrs. McCann and Mr. McBride to speak to this. So essentially what you're looking at is a change from 2 current lunch periods to 1. And there's a kind of a long rationale of why they'd like to do this. And I think more than anything, what Mr. McBride is asking for is approval to give this a try. And I think what I've heard Frank repeatedly say is, if we feel that this isn't working the way that we had hoped, that we're flexible and easy to go back to the current system. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. McBride.
Thank you again, and any questions you might have, I'll try to keep it real broad and real simple. And I know that I've lived this now for 28, 29 years. You have not. I love our schedule at Goffstown High School. And there's basically every day 4 blocks. Block 1 and block 2, 90 minutes. 11 o'clock hits, then it's lunchtime. I'm going to put block 3 aside for a second. The end of the day, 90 minutes, the 1-ish to 2:41-ish time. We're talking about the 2-hour block of time where we have lunches. And over my tenure here, we've had, I believe, 4 lunches, 3 lunches. 2 is pretty new in some ways. But we're asking to try 1. And again, the short version of the why is that particularly over the few years where we've worked and had to deal with COVID, we used space. The notion of putting a bunch of people into a condensed space didn't make a lot of sense, so we used classroom spaces, and we found, and outside, and we found that it worked really, really well. And kids really liked having choice, which is a fundamental tenet of Goffstown High School with scheduling and what have you, is choice. So with that, and with, over the years, there's less kids who access lunches, lots of kids who bring lunches to school. Technology's improved where the point of sale is a lot quicker, where kids can just punch in their code and go. And I'm going to go back, the first 2 blocks of the day, it's like perfection. Clean as a whistle. Everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing. That 3rd block, not perfection, but we do as best we can because it's more of the movement and choices, and it gets more complicated. And then sometimes that 3rd block and 4th block, pretty darn good as well, though sometimes a few of the challenges, I would say, over managing lunches in a public high school can spill over even to 4th block of the day as well. So right now, what we do, we think works very well, but we think this could be even better. And we have virtually unanimous support of staff. There were a few people who thought, but I think they would even admit it, they liked their 12:41 lunch instead of their new 11 o'clock lunch that we're providing. And I think there'll be some kids, based on that we're already doing it this way, who might not love it. And there's going to be a chunk of kids who have early release who I think are going to say, hey, I want my 30 minutes back, because the early release kids often have the first lunch, so that come 12:30-ish, they could leave for their early release. Now we'd be proposing, you work hard for 90 minutes, everyone has their 5 minutes off / passing time. You work hard for 90 minutes, everyone has their 5 minutes off / passing time. Then it's lunch for every single student and adult for that 35 minutes-ish. And then we would end the day with 2 grade blocks again, where now there's that complicated lunch period. That's a broad oversimplification. There's way more details. There's more details in the paper that I believe you have. But we feel strongly that this will work, and we'll admit if it's wrong in a week, as Mr. Bullock said, we switch back.
Maybe quicker.
Yeah, true.
That's how it goes.
Frank, can you talk a little bit about supervision, security,
Yeah.
school safety?
And I'm going to use as an example, if I could, is that, which I mentioned in here, the beginning of our school day, if I were to go back, if you would indulge me, 29 years ago when I started here, in the morning, we all get shoved into a cafeteria. There were 3 teachers on duty, and we supervised them, and it probably looked similar to public schools / prisons. Like there was just a whole condensed, and then when the bell rang, there was the running of the bulls that people went. And then if you wanted to see a teacher, you had to get a pass to be able to see the teacher. We evolved long ago thinking that there's a better way to do this. And mornings are important from how do you feel and how do you start your day. So we've given kids choice and space. So from 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock every single day, there are kids at every nook and cranny in this whole building with staff that are present, but in some ways you would say technically not on duty to supervise. The people who are supervising are administrators and 4 teachers who have a duty, and that duty time doesn't really technically start till like 7:20-ish or 7:25. My point in mentioning that is that having a good culture is part of what I think we do well here, so that during lunches, administrators are out and about, we have teachers on lunch duty. I think part of the benefit to this notion too, there's just going to be staff as well. And many staff sit down and eat in small little lunch bunches. Many staff eat in their classrooms with tons of the kids that have been in their classrooms for the last few years. And then there's staff who go commingle with kids as well. So I think we have plenty of staff, knowing that it's having the good culture which makes it work. You know, if we got dropped into a new school and we weren't, and we were starting this, I might think, crazy idea. It doesn't make a ton of sense, but I think over time we have expected and kind of trained staff, students in particular, on our expectations and what do we expect. Our school resource officer supports this idea very much, and we feel like we have the hands on deck that we need. And in some ways, what we think is safer is this 35-minute window that's a bit more complicated, where now there's a 35-minute window, there's a 35-minute window, and part of not getting stuck in the weeds, that's the challenging piece, is if a kid says, I want to go to the bathroom during lunch, they can easily then just slip into where the other 500 kids are having lunch. So that's part of that, the idea of the change with more focus, that it's easier to know where everyone should be. And we have that now. We're proposing that 135 minutes, where there'll be all hands on deck, administrators, the staff that are on duty as well, our school resource officer, and we can pull in others if need be. And I don't know if that's what Mr. Bulkey was asking, but we feel like we will have plenty of staff to have a very, very safe lunch, as safe as it currently is now, knowing that again, that we do everything that we can to mitigate risk, but inherently, there's lots of people and lots of moving parts.
Ellen and Brian, go ahead. Go ahead, Ellen.
I know you said Megan's on board with this.
Yeah.
That was my question.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, how much time does it take to serve hot lunch to
It goes really quick. So I did it for
the whole
a
student body.
lot of last year, given all of the challenges we had with staffing. And honestly, the thing that takes the single most amount of time is the students checking out. And so one of the things we've done is we've also got the barcode readers now in the back of their IDs. They'll just be able to scan, which will be even quicker still than entering their lunch number. But really, that's where the line gets a little clogged up, is checking them out at the cashier. So I think one of the things, if we find that this is working, that may be one piece that we would want to look at, is can we expand and add an additional checkout station? But other than that, I would say, Ellen, most days when I go down there, the line is almost completely gone about 6 minutes into the lunch block. It's quick.
So about 10 to 12 minutes of the 35-minute block will be getting every kid through the hot lunch line?
Yeah.
And I should
And a
know the number,
kiosk,
Meg will know
yeah.
the number, but again, there's a solid 60 or 70% that's not what they need to do to eat. They just take out their lunch that they brought and they eat.
Yeah, so it's only 30-40%. Thank you.
So at this point, are you just going to have them be able to buy their food only in the cafeteria, or are you?
No, we're
'cause I
looking
thought I read
at,
the
yeah,
caf
we're looking
moving.
at a kiosk in
Okay.
the theater area that would be grab and go sandwiches, salads, and
Mm-hmm.
kind of get students used to, if you're looking for what today's hot meal is, you're going to the caf. If you're looking for something quicker, or you know that you don't want a Frito burrito, hit the theater lobby and pick up a sandwich or a salad.
Okay. Shane, go ahead.
Sure, I'd just like to offer my perspective, because I work in high school who consolidated lunches this year, and it's been tremendous. There's been fewer transitions, which translates to fewer disruptions, and it's opened up staff members to do different things with different students. So I would fully support this because I've lived it, and it's a little different because we've gone from 3 to 2. You're going from 2 to 1, but it's really been beneficial. So I think this is a good idea to at least try, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But I think that it probably will, and it'll probably be beneficial.
Go ahead, Caroline.
How long would you plan on trying this for? And maybe what time would you start it? Maybe I'm not understanding the whole, I get the concept, but are you gaining time back? And what are,
So instructional time doesn't shift at all.
Yeah.
By having the single lunch happen between those two 90-minute blocks right now, we're building in all of the passing time, and that's where we kind of pick up a few minutes to add to that lunch.
Okay.
Whereas right now, kids have a lunch, they have to move to class, then we need time to move the second group of kids to the cafeteria. So it's passing time that's getting added into that block for lunch, and no instructional time is being impacted.
okay, so they're not getting out of school, like, school's not ending earlier?
No.
Okay.
Nope.
And what time are you planning on?
So it would be 11:01 to 11:36.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jenny.
Could you talk a little bit more about the lunch lockers?
Yeah, so that's something Megan and I had talked about and we had looked at, and I think she had also discussed it with Scott. Actually, I think we had had the initial conversations even pre-COVID about those. Right now, if that was something we decided we wanted to do, there was a lead time of almost 2 years at one point. But they are essentially like the Amazon lockers that are out there, where if we were to get to a place where kids could pre-order lunch, they would get a email or a text that gave them a locker number and a code, and they would be able to go to the locker, access it, and grab their lunch. So it would allow the kitchen staff to prep things ahead of time, move them into the locker. It would be prepaid through the app and their account, and that would be one less kind of group coming down through. And as you might recall, when we did the flooring project upstairs in the 300 wing, we removed all of the lockers. So that hallway is really wide, and that would be another place we could envision putting those down the road if that was to be something that we wanted to explore, if this idea of one lunch, continued to work. Yeah.
Anyone else? Questions? So if we approve this, when would you start?
I asked, Megan wasn't in the office, and I asked the lunch ladies, because, full disclosure, Friday we're doing lunch anyways. We were doing it without approval because we do this typically when we do, it's our winter, not
Yeah,
winter, it's
assembly.
our homecoming
Homecoming
week,
assembly,
big
yeah.
assembly. So we do this every once in a great while. So when I said, if I get approval tonight, should we do Wednesday or Monday? They're like, Wednesday. So Monday, they told me Monday would be good. That was not Megan, those were her troops who said Monday would be good. So I would hope that we'd be able to do it for all next week and see how it goes.
And then let us know how things go afterwards.
Yes.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, just a quick.
Oh, sure,
it's-
Rhoda.
Since you do have experience doing it, and you will be doing this on Friday, what has how has that worked? I mean, it sounds like you've already done this.
The Winter Carnival, the 2 weeks Winter Carnival, Homecoming and Winter Carnival are pretty unique days with lots and lots of energy and lots of, so I would say they've worked well, but they're very unique days with you know, lots and lots of energy. I guess that's the nicest way that we try to contain really well and appropriately and have good, clean fun in an assembly, but they're unique days. They've been good, but it's a tough, and it would typically happen twice a year.
Yeah, and the first day of school,
True.
which is a little longer, being that first day, and a lot of acclimation pieces. But even then, I would say typically we find ourselves going, this was too long, why didn't we shorten it? So
Yeah.
I think it works.
And just a follow-up question, I think you said this early on, they can eat wherever they want, or they can choose to eat in a classroom?
So current practice right now, what students are doing, absolutely no back parking lot. But they can loop around the building, there's kids out front, there's kids in the softball field, you'll see kids on almost any, right now, because of the 2 lunches, there's, in the building, you can lunch on the floor, so like the 300 and 400 lunch is off limits for the first lunch, when the 1 and 200 are, that's how we have lunches now by parts of the building. So there's a few spots that are off limits currently now, but every other place that you go, you would see kids. Benches have been huge, and with expanded benches, where we saw kids enjoyed the benches, like with the hallway to nowhere, there are benches. So there are kids all over during lunch. You will see the 2 biggest factors that made the first week saying we can do this. The lines were so small, and there were, 40% of the capacity in the cafeterias. There was 40% capacity in the cafeterias because kids were so dispersed to other spots. They've really enjoyed having more choices as opposed to being in the condensed food court of a mall.
And how is that in the classroom? If people are eating, are they taking care of their food and trays and everything?
And I've thought a lot about this. People have been really, really good, and sometimes they get in trouble for this, is that trash is like a bad offense at Goffstown High School. And I maybe take it too far, but I am militant about you pick up after yourself for many, many reasons, because I just believe in it, but custodians work hard enough. They don't have to pick up your trash. So we work hard imposing our will early that this is not okay. So kids have been great, I would say, overall.
And I also think that in classrooms, they're eating typically in the classroom that they have their own 5th or 6th period class. And so the relationship they have with the teacher is usually such that if they're choosing to eat there, they're going to want to please, right, and make sure that the space is left in a condition that they're going to want to come in now and have a 90-minute class in as well.
Are you all set?
Yep.
Thanks for that. Go ahead, Ellen.
Yeah, 2 little things. The kids are all over the place, inside and outside, and you're saying there is adequate supervision.
I'm going to go back to the morning. I can get there's an illusion of control sometimes with supervision. I think of like parents, if you think about it, like you can't always watch your child every single second of the day. So we have an incredibly safe school, and if there's misbehavior, then we look at the 60 cameras, and we it's like boom, it goes. You can quickly identify who misstepped and address it. So
I'm more concerned with the outside and everything they could get into. And you're relying on cameras?
So outside, there are staff assigned. Formal lunch duty staff are assigned to the outside of the building. And I think one of the things this also allows us to do, Ellen, is potentially to add an additional person to that outside team when the weather is conducive enough, because with all of the teaching staff now being off at that same time, they're not officially right on duty, but we don't have adults who are going to ignore something. So if someone is sitting in their classroom in the 200 wing and something seems to be occurring, as professionals, they're going to step out and see what that is. They're going to open the door to the classroom next door to them.
So, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Ellen.
it went away.
All right, well, you,
Good
Can I just
question.
mention too, we use the
remember,
gator-
let me know.
We use the gator all the time. Thank you,
Yep.
Mr. Balky, for driving the bus so well many years ago, is that the gator is used all the time. So that is
Yeah.
another way, and we have a person who like
Driving
enjoys using
around.
it, so there is a lot of supervision.
Do you remember now?
Yes.
All right, go ahead.
I
And
had to
then
look at my
Jared.
notes. I don't know that there is a concern, but could there be an issue with regard to contracts and duties? Or is that not an issue with the contract? No, not at all. Okay.
You mean doing lunch duty that is not in
Yeah,
their
assigned to
contract?
duties. I don't remember what's in the contract.
Yep.
And it sounds like everybody and anybody can, in essence, be doing a duty.
Right, right.
Eat in their classroom,
Yeah.
but there are people assigned to duties.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
So Jared had his hand up
Go
first,
ahead,
Dan.
Alfred.
Yeah,
So
my
go
question
ahead,
was about
Jared.
personal development, that's in the
Okay,
contract.
and I
which is
have a
what-
feeling Dan is going to tack on to this.
I do, I have two questions that kind of go into there. So, staff assigned, by the way, I think it's a great idea, I don't know why we've not only had one lunch the whole time. It just makes more sense to me, just to make that happen. You only have one thing to deal with, everybody's doing the same thing. Study, study, have a break, study, study. The way it's split right now, if you have a duty, you're a teacher, you have a duty, you also have another time to take lunch. So what happens now to those who are going to be assigned the duty? When are they going to have lunch?
So because the duty is attached to the class period, either period 5 or period 6, that teacher who has lunch duty does not teach that period.
The next period?
Correct. So after the lunch period is over and that duty is over, they'll have over an hour plus of time that they would have for their lunch.
Help me out. On the even
Yep.
days, it's period 2, 4,
6 and 8.
then it'll be 6 and 8, and
Yep.
then it'll be 1, 3, 5, and 7.
Yep.
So when you say 5 and 6, those are the two that are right after lunch that start at 12:30.
Yeah, because right now the
12:40.
lunches are embedded in those periods. So the
Right.
teachers who are
I thought they
assigned
were
to
gonna
lunch
get-
duty,
I thought they were coming out.
so when we split them.
Yeah.
Yes, those teachers who have the duty right now don't teach that period because they have that duty.
They're off those 2 hours.
Right, so they're going to be off for the lunch to take a lunch plus the 90 minutes, so they'll be off for 2 hours instead of just
Well,
an
they'll
hour
be
and a half.
on duty.
They'll
'cause
be
it's their
on the
duty
duty
period.
for during the lunch period
Yeah.
anyway, but then they'll have the 90 minutes. So they actually get another 30 minutes in order for prep or something.
Yes, they will have time, some
Yeah.
additional time for that.
Yeah.
In terms of, so it's 35 minutes, then we would also ask that they are helping supervise with our students who go to MST before that bus comes at noon. So
Okay.
when all is said and done, the number of minutes of duty that they do will be equivalent to what their colleagues who have a traditional study hall in their classroom do. And they'll still have time for that lunch period for themselves.
Same subject, I'm going to segue it, and it might be something that Mr. Scott would have to answer, so I'm just giving him an idea that he has to pay attention to the question.
Dan, I got
That was
good
probably
news.
a good heads up, Dan.
The staff who are serving lunch, preparing lunch and serving lunch, I don't know how they do it now, so if we go ahead and you're preparing lunch for one block, then you're preparing or doing something for lunch in another block, now everything's at the beginning. Are they going to start earlier and
Yes.
end earlier?
Yes.
Yes, that was the plan that Megan has discussed with them and with the business office.
Sorry to disturb you, Scott, you didn't have to stop doing what you were doing.
All right, so we've had a pretty good discussion. Is there any other questions or comments? If not, they are looking for an approval, if anyone's ready to do a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the lunch consolidation as presented by the GHS administration.
Thank you, Shane.
Second.
And I have a second by Ellen. Any further discussion or questions? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous. Good luck. Let us
Thank you.
know how things go, even if you give a message to Brian.
Thank you.
I'll give an
So-
update to the board.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
All right, so don't go anywhere,
Yes.
because now.
Stay put.
All right, so, new course approval form.
So
Yes.
I'll do just a
Yeah,
a
just do a
brief,
brief.
intro. So the board will recall that we had proposed a few new changes to be included into the program of studies that included a couple of physical education classes that you already approved, as well as an additional AP course. So the remaining AP course that's on the table for the board to consider and to approve is an AP Human Geography class. In general, I would make the comment to the board that adding AP classes is a good thing. These are classes that are very rigorous. There is a very clear, transparent process. These classes are taught all over the country, and students who take the exam, there's an exam at the end of all AP classes, and they're scored on a 1 through 5 kind of scoring rubric. Students that receive typically 3, 4, or 5 are eligible to receive college credit for these classes at approved universities and colleges when they get there. So this is something that I do fully support. I think adding additional courses, particularly AP courses, gives additional choice. It increases our rigor, and it provides opportunities for kids. I was speaking with a current New Boston student's parent today, who is a junior in college, and partly due to AP classes, he is graduating 1 year early and saving his parents and himself a whole lot of money. So this is something that I think is a good thing for the school.
Brian? Also, not only do they get college credit, but they can be opted out of the basic requirement like English 1 if they
Like an introductory course, which may allow them to take another elective or another.
A higher other class
Right.
that's more meaningful to them if they get a 3 or 4. So not only do they get the credit, but they can take a more meaningful course instead of that introductory course in college. So
Right.
it really is helpful all the way around.
Thank you, Jenny. Go ahead, Ellen.
As I'm reading the paper we have this evening, this course is not an additional AP course, it's replacing an existing AP course.
No, so just to clarify that was the original plan, and I respectfully requested Mrs. McCann consider keeping the AP World History, so this is additional.
This is
So this is
additional,
not
okay.
replacement.
And it's for anyone but freshmen as well, right?
It says here
Yeah.
9th grade.
Yeah, so the intent when we started this process, was that this would become the traditional entry AP course in 9th grade for our social studies students. AP World, historically, the data bears itself out that it's actually one of the most challenging AP courses that the College Board offers. And so when our new to us 9th graders transition into high school, and then they also take that course, it can be a bit overwhelming. However, the AP Human Geography course is considered to be more of a survey and introductory course as it looks at physical geography of the globe. And with that, it also starts to introduce them to different economic systems, different political systems, so that as they move through, if they choose to, that AP social studies curriculum of American government, U.S. history, world history, European history that we offer, they have greater context already into which to place that content. So I would hypothesize that for the first few years, we likely would see students of all grade levels, because we're going to have students who haven't had the opportunity to take the course with us here, and we would never say, no, you can't take it. But our intent would still be to encourage 9th graders to take this as the entry-level course, and if they're interested in the AP World, if they're passionate about it, jump in and go for it. If not, we would recommend take that later in your time with us.
Right. Thank you, Kim. Go ahead, Ellen.
So, while it says 9th grade, any grade level can take this AP course?
Yes.
Okay. And it's not replacing. I've done a lot of research on this.
Right,
online.
and
I read the
Kim
book.
sent out a bunch of stuff, too.
I went through the book, and we got a bunch of stuff. I find it fascinating, would love to take the course myself, okay?
Me too.
I'll just tell you that, and a good piece of it is section I was teaching in 6th grade years ago, and I found it fascinating. My only, and I've spoken with Kim about this, in all that research and reading it up on it, I see significant potential for biases in contemporary topics. If the instructor isn't aware that this entire scope of the course can lend itself to that. I can't see a young person understanding what I'm talking about, but I see topics that can lend itself to a great deal of bias in the classroom that I'm not so sure we want to have in there. And I know the high school has expressed their, how they caution teachers and guide things and all. That was the only thing I could come up with that I thought about. It really hit me as I was reading the material and going through the book, that I think it's a great course. It really gives a broad dynamic of more detailed things coming up in future courses. It's just that I would ask administration and whoever the teachers are to be very cautious and that they're teaching factual information and not opinions. Because it's very easy to do in this, I think.
Right, relax, exactly.
You take it, Ellen, on VLAX.
I could?
Yeah,
That's technology.
yeah, it is. It's all online.
Okay, I need a buddy to help me.
All right, so.
But, okay, thank you.
But thanks, Ellen.
That's just my concerns.
No, no, I appreciate that. Go ahead, Shane.
Thank you. So Kim, I did a lot of research on this as well, and I may be oversimplifying it, but is this course essentially a mixture of geography, world history, and sociology?
Yes.
Is that essentially what
Yes.
the course is?
Yep.
Because in all the research I've done, that's what I found. And these are all courses that we already teach, so I think mixing them together won't be much of a problem, so thank you.
Because it really is intended to be that introductory survey course, so that then as you take the economics courses, as you take the political systems courses, you have that first level of understanding that you're bringing to it.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Jenny.
In my research also, I noted that it said that this is probably the best AP course to start freshmen on. So I think this is like a really good thing to start our freshmen on so that they can start in the AP process.
Right. Thank you, Jenny. Anyone else? Questions, comments? Dan, you good?
No,
Okay.
I'm not.
I was waiting for your hand, so go ahead.
I think it's an AP course. And the ability of instruction for that level of student concerns me. If it was a senior, for instance, I think they could probably handle some of the concepts that Ellen was kind of referring to. Factual information is factual information. Unfortunately, I don't have time during the day to come and take a peek at the textbook, which I would like to have seen. Ellen, having seen the textbook and it scares that we could have that much bias available, and that's what concerns me.
Yeah.
And the freshman is young to be able to understand that concept, in my mind. If we did this, I would want it related to the older kids who have gone through it and maybe can understand the concept that hopefully we're trying to get, which is you gotta understand and hear every side and then be able to independently come to a conclusion, not to be told the conclusion. And the capability to be told it is concerning to me. Now, when you have history is history. Well, we know history may not be history because we've heard of the revisionist history. Geography is the geography, the factual information about everyone's, this is how it's happening, but I'm not convinced yet that the course is what before I would have a yay, I would have to be able to see more of it, and I just don't have time, unfortunately. To come
That's
in
fair.
during the day, sit down there, look at the book, maybe in an evening or something, but I'm not in favor of it at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Was there someone over here that said something? All right, Retta.
I'm hearing what you say, Dan, and I think that a lot of, in any course, there is that opportunity, once students start speaking, to put opinion first as fact. I think the role of the teacher, and I'm not saying I see it, and oftentimes you don't see it until you see a live class. What's in a textbook is, the concepts. Where the discussion comes in is in the classroom. And, I hope that the opportunity is there for that kind of discussion. I know that this doesn't start in the freshman level. I mean, they're teaching critical thinking very early in elementary school, and especially the libraries, about how to look at information at a very young age. I think that that concept probably is not going to be new to students. How freshmen may react to things may not, they may not be ready to do that, but I think that's part of the learning and the teaching. And again, I'm not saying because I've sat in the class and observed, but that would be my hope, that that's how things are being taught. And when we talk with administration, that's what they say, so.
Alan?
Just
Thank you,
real
Retta.
quick, as Dan was speaking, some topics that are definitely a broader topic within this course could be women's issues, immigration. There are new terms, they're not new, but none of us have heard various terms in relationship to different kind of economies, different government types. As I was reading the book and other literature, I'm sitting there going, okay, what's the reason that somebody somewhere is choosing not to call it a government, a democracy, but something else? Why is communism no longer called that? It's called something else. There are topics that could easily morph into contentious, what's the word I want?
Divisive concepts.
Thank you. Divisive concepts.
Thank you, Shane.
If the teacher is not knowledgeable enough and understanding enough of those things. Don't get me wrong, discuss what you want, but again, these are very young kids. I know a lot of adults that couldn't take some of the things that I've read about in here and synthesize it. I would just ask that caution be taken in the instruction, and that the people who are going to be teaching it are aware and cautious.
Right.
I think this course can be very constructive, especially looking at it from human factors in history and the impacts of agriculture and the impacts of moving throughout the world, coming out of Africa and all that. It's fascinating. But again, just be careful, and these are really young kids to be taking this type of topic, so.
And I know Shane has something to say, and then I'd like, Kim and Frank to weigh in on what board members are saying. Go ahead, Shane.
Yeah, I would just, so to kind of piggyback on what Ellen said, I would just say that, so the concepts like the economy and women's rights and immigration, things like that, those are already taught in different courses that we already have. So I don't hear an issue in any of those courses, so I think we would be able to avoid issues in this course as well. And I think it's important, to understand that teaching now is really a lot of teaching students to think critically, like I think Retta mentioned, but like synthesize, interpret, apply information. And I think that teachers really now are taking more of a facilitator role. So I think that helps to avoid some of the biases that people might think could pop up. So there is that part of it to consider, though I do understand the concerns. Yeah.
Thank you, Shane. Okay. Go ahead, Jenny, because I would like Kim and Frank to weigh in.
I kind of think in the environment right now, number one, I think we work hard at getting teachers that that kind of try to do the right thing. But also, I think they're very careful now to do the right thing and to make sure that they don't let biases come into the classroom. Because, I mean, they can get into trouble for doing that right now. So I think that they're going to, maybe if kids get off on the wrong track, they're going to use their facilitating skills to get the class back on track, onto what they should be talking about. And maybe some things are going to come out that, that are different. But that's good sometimes for people to discuss something that's a little different and then bring it back, to get back to the middle of a discussion. I think it's a good class, and I think it's good to have the kids talk about the world and the differences that there are in the world. And that's not a bad thing, I don't think.
Thank you, Jenny. So I'd like to give you some opportunity to answer some concerns and stuff.
So a couple of thoughts. I think both of us, coming from background of being social studies teachers, this is an area that we definitely have a unique understanding of as a classroom teacher, and how quickly a conversation, can go off the rails potentially if you are not being vigilant. So it is that use of facilitation skills. It is being mindful of not only what the students are saying, but what we're saying. And I have always felt and continued to have these conversations with our humanities teachers as their supervisor, that the time in the classroom is not ours to be on a soapbox in any way, shape, or form. Our job is to work with students, to teach them how to effectively read, analyze, write, and come to conclusions that they can defend with the primary and secondary sources that are available to them. That is the core fundamental role that we serve in a social studies classroom. And so I would hope that this board, after 20 plus years of us in these seats and in this building and in classrooms and working with students, would trust and believe when we say that is what our focus is and how we look to manage and supervise those classrooms. I think in terms, Ellen, of some of those concepts and topics that you mentioned, they are in almost any history course. They are going to be highlighted. It's not something new or different. Those are also themes and topics that come up in the traditional 9th grade world history class, whether it's the AP level or the open level. I know, I will say, my daughter just finished the course on VLAX, and she was very frustrated with the women's issues segment at the end, that it felt like an add-on, that she went through this entire course and looked at how political systems, economic systems, globally have developed over years, and there was almost no mention of the role that women played in that until that little last section of the book. And so I think it is also important that we do have those conversations and we look at those public sector roles and intersections of all genders, right, male and female, in the development of economies, countries, all of those pieces. And I think it's important, as a mother of a teenage daughter, that we also provide opportunity for them to see themselves in the world and having an impact in the world around them. So,
thank you, Kim. Thank you. So we've had some pretty good discussion. Any questions? Any more comments for Kim or Frank?
Did you have a motion already?
No, we would need to do a motion to approve it. And this is for next year, not this year.
Yeah.
I'll move the approval of the proposed AP Human Geography.
All right, so Ellen made a motion. Do I have a
As
second?
presented.
As
Second.
And Ginny second. Sorry, Caroline, I saw
Sorry.
her hand
I
up
didn't know.
first. Any other discussion before I do roll call? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Abstaining. All right, so we have one no, Denise, and the rest yes. Motion passed. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
So you're more than welcome to go home. You don't have to stay, but thank you.
In fact, you're being asked to go home.
Right.
You're not going to support Chachos here?
It's great idea.
What?
Yes, the next thing is, I'll give it to Scott for the printer donation. You're more than welcome to stay for that, but you can leave at any time.
Frank is the only one who knows how to load the material into the 3D printer.
Into the, all right, so why don't you give everybody an overview?
Mr. Chachos, who is a technology teacher here, has garnered a donation of three 3D printers. Quantity 3. And the value of those is about $1,500. So it doesn't rise to the level of having to hold a public hearing, but it does rise to the level of the board accepting the donation. There's no hardware or software needs that are outside of what we already have. And then the materials that will be extruded for this 3D printing, that will be part of just the regular budget that we have. So, kudos to Mr. Chachos, who, by the way, I've had interactions with, does a great job here, and I appreciate the fact that he was able to secure this from, a community member.
That's
And
awesome. Right.
so it's really just for the board to, accept the donation. And I should,
Well, hang on one second now. Dan had his hand up.
I just wanted
hold
to
that, 1
acknowledge the
minute.
gentleman's name.
It's in the letter. Everybody has the letter.
Publicly, Greg Betchlick
Of
of
Goffstown.
Goffstown. So I
Yeah.
wanted to acknowledge him for his generous donation as well.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Dan.
Could you clarify for us, Mr. Scott, is it 2 3D printers and a 3D scanner, or 3 3D printers?
It's 2 3D printers and 1 scanner. I
Okay,
apologize,
thank you.
yeah.
All right. here you
Just
go.
wanted to make sure.
But the picture that I showed you is just the printer.
Yes.
Okay.
Anyone else have any questions for Scott? All right, go ahead, Ellen.
I move that we accept the donation as it's been presented and thank, I'm going to say Mr. B.
Right.
for getting this for us.
Thank you, Ellen. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Ginny.
Whomever.
I saw her hand up.
Yeah, you always look to the right.
I guess I do. Sorry, I'll make sure I look to the left next time.
That's okay.
Any further discussion?
It's all good.
Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous. Thank you. Now you guys can go home. Thank you guys for coming in tonight. All right, so we are going to finish up our budgets tonight for the middle school and the high school. So on the budget with notes, we start on page 51, and the budget with actuals is page 45.
And which primarily should I look at?
We're going to do the one with the notes.
With the notes.
But if you, you know.
51.
Yeah, so do that one
51 and
first.
45.
Yep, 51 for notes and 45 with
And the
actuals.
minutes we got as drafts, we should hold
The-
on, read it home for the next meeting.
Yes, so the minutes that you have in your packets are from the joint meetings from last week, which are very long. So Denise gave copies, so you can read them, and we will approve them Monday.
Mrs. Moran has slight calluses on.
Yeah, she has been very busy these last 2 weeks with lots and lots of minutes, yes. All right, so we're going to start with the middle school on page 51. So if anybody has any questions, go ahead,
I just have one thing
Scott.
to bring to the board's
Yeah.
attention. In October is when we get some pieces of information regarding our budget. Guaranteed maximum rate for health and dental is always the big one. And because we start so early, it does have an impact sometimes. The other one that we get in October is from your property and liability insurance carrier as well. So Primex handles our insurance for property liability coverage as well as workers' comp and unemployment. And then this time of year is when they give us those rates. So Fortunately, workers' compensation and unemployment insurance are good, no increases. But unfortunately, our property and liability insurance went up. And that would be on line 404, which is on page 15, line 404.
Oh, going all the way back? Okay.
I just have to disclose this
Yep,
because I just got it
15.
yesterday.
Okay.
That is going up $8,305. So now the new total is going to be $127,000 for our property and liability insurance coverage. So I just wanted you to know that.
Okay, did everybody get that?
What line was that?
404,
404.
page 15.
Page 15, line 404. And I did, I talked to Brian and Kate about this today. is that
127,000 is the new number.
It's not a default item. There is, I checked the law, and there is no RSA that mandates that school districts carry property and liability insurance coverage. It says may, so because of that, that's a new item. It's not a default. So
Scott, I would share again, this would be an example that if you went and looked around other school districts, they would likely include this.
Oh, I'm sure they would, but I just,
This is-
our interpretation is different.
We are, I would say, purists in many ways with respect to the interpretation of that.
Right,
I'm so glad we follow the law.
yes, it's good.
I'm
there
glad
any-
that this is a topic that we've had agreement for, a decade and a half. I mean, I
Many
completely-
years and-
Completely agree. Yep.
So is there anything to highlight on page 51, Scott?
Yeah, I wanted just to make note of line 1358, and that is a new 8750 homework den. So this is one that I wanted to underscore, not just for the school board, but with the budget committee as well, is there is double that need, okay? However, we're going to be utilizing a tutoring.com, and Assistant Superintendent Kohler has been working on that. And that is more or less an online virtual resource that the state is providing for free. So the budget request from both the middle school and high school was double what you see here. We knocked it back because we're going to have a combination of virtual and in-person tutoring available. In the past, we used like IDEA grants and other things. Those have dried up. So that is something that's new on that particular page. So I just wanted to clarify that.
But it is, however, a program we've had for many
Years. It's not
right.
like new per se, it was just funded
Yep.
outside of the general fund budget.
All right, thank you, Scott. All right, so does anybody else have any questions on page 51? 51 of notes. Go ahead.
I don't know where it is, so, we had hired somebody to help with post-COVID, and that, I don't remember what the position was called.
Dean of
Dean of
Remediation.
Was this Dean of
Okay.
remediation?
That's Dr. McMurray.
Yeah.
Okay, is that staying, and if it is still in here, where's the data we asked for that shows?
It's not in here.
It's not in here.
We're not doing it.
We're not bringing it forward as a budget request.
Okay, thank you.
Because that's paid with
That's being currently
ESSER.
paid with ESSER funds.
ESSER funds.
And this will be the last
So we're
year
not
of that.
getting rid of the program yet, right?
No.
We're
So
paying
the
with
program
ESSERs.
will continue for the remainder of this year. And currently, I will tell you, it's going very well. Dr. McMurray is a special human being and is providing a lot of additional social emotional support, behavioral support. For example, today, I had two elements that I had parents call me about, and I asked for some investigation to be done, and it was nice to have additional help that I could get the information that I needed to be able to help a parent immediately. So this has been a highly effective program. However, I will say, and I think the board knows and understands and appreciates this, we run a lean operation. We don't have more people than we need. It would be a wonderful, nice to have to continue, but unfortunately with our class sizes, our concerns about Maple Ave, our overcrowding at Maple Ave in particular, resources will be used other places. So that program will not continue past this year.
Not even elements of it?
Elements, perhaps. I don't want to tip my hat to anything, but we are looking at the possibility of some programmatic changes next year that would perhaps include some of that similar support for students, but Dr. McMurray is an additional temporary administrator, so that position will no longer remain.
I'm always concerned about addressing the behavioral needs.
Oh, they're being
Yeah.
addressed.
All the way through the system,
Right.
just because the impact is so significant, so,
Yep.
thank you.
Thanks, Ellen. All right, so if we're good on 51, I'm going to move on to page 52. If anybody has any questions, anything there, Scott, to highlight?
Not really. I mean, you'll see that when I reviewed this with Jessica Milligan and Lyle and Brandy, I mean, these were just adjustments to, just as a result of inflationary type things. And that's why you'll see a couple of them where supplies have gone up, $250 here, $1,000 there, just based upon those types of things. So, and that, Jessica took like almost a too conservative approach to the budget. So we had some conversations. There were things I actually added,
Right.
because I felt it was a little too conservative, but,
All right, anybody on 52? All right, moving on to page 53.
if I could on 53, line number 1427, which is replacement furniture, that's one where I bumped it up a tad bit. We have a very good program here at Goffstown High School where we replace furniture on a cycle. And what we don't have that same program at Mountain View. My conversation with Jessica for next year is trying to get on a more aggressive replacement furniture cycle at Mountain View Middle School. Most of the furniture there is 30 years old, and it's showing signs of age. We did purchase new desks through grant, et cetera, but there's more of a need to get on that type of program where we're replacing 4, 5, 6 classrooms worth of, say, chairs or things like that. So that's something that you'll probably see going forward. We didn't do it to that degree here, but it's something that I just wanted to put that in your ear because you're going to hear about that in future years.
Heather, may I add something?
Yeah, go ahead, Wendy.
So with the monies, just because I've been there, we could only do 2 classrooms a year. What became really difficult is when you were looking at science classrooms, art classrooms, those tables for those rooms are significantly more expensive, and that would eat up your entire furniture line budget. So I agree with Scott. I think moving forward, that's definitely something that needs to be done because we have noticed wear and tear over the last few years, even with getting some monies from ESSER to be able to replace more.
Right.
Yeah, so I think in the years to come, that number probably needs to be more like 20 or 25,000 to get onto the same type of cycle that we have here at the high school. The buildings are, somewhat comparable in size. So I just wanted to, didn't do it this year, but
Yep.
it's
Okay,
got to let you know what's coming.
absolutely. Thank you, Scott.
All right.
All right, so we'll move on to page 54. This is more dues and fees and benefits and stuff. Any questions on page 54? All right, then we can go on to page 55.
This is mostly like special ed, and
Yep.
we didn't, we looked at what we spent, and there was really no reason to increase or decrease any of the lines, and
Yeah,
that one,
everything is
and
pretty
actually
accurate.
page 56 for that matter,
Yep.
it was pretty status quo
Mm-hmm.
on a lot of that.
Yep, go ahead, Ellen.
How can any lines be status quo with an 8% inflation rate?
Because when we looked at where we were, even with inflation, I think we can absorb that. So I think sometimes I'll try to, when we do a budget, we look at, okay, we've hit that tipping point per se, where I think we need to increase it. I know it's a little bit of a feeling or just an instinct, but like, I think that it's a lot of times I'm like, we can wait one more year and then we do our bump, you know? And you'll see that on some of these lines, I did that, we increased them. Others was like, one more year, you know? Because in totality, I think we can sustain it within our budget. So it's just,
Okay. Just remember, next year could be
yeah.
quite a bump.
Yeah.
But we will balance that,
Yeah.
as we always do.
Yeah.
That's what this is all- it's all-
There are, you know, and again, there are a lot of requests that come in every year. Routinely, there are massive increases that are asked for across the schools, and we have to make hard decisions, knowing that we have to keep it all in total perspective, and again, recognizing, as the board knows, that we hope to be asking the voters to approve a warrant article for our support staff this year. So whenever we have a teacher contract or a support staff contract, all other elements in the budget really need to take a very conservative, and we need to minimize the increases because we want to maximize the hopeful support of the contract.
All right, so moving on to page 56. Go ahead, Ellen.
Just quick, because I noticed it throughout here, like the very first line, 14.
86.
Thank you.
Okay.
There's nothing in the boxes between title and note description, but then there's money at the end under note amount. Is this a new line?
Previous page.
No, it's the previous
It's
page,
previous
so,
page.
whenever there's a note, it replicates.
So it starts at 1482.
So if you go to line 1482,
Yeah.
you'll see that there's $3,029 that is in the proposed budget, and then the following lines then total up to that amount of
Right,
money.
it breaks it
Oh,
down.
breaks it down.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's real quick.
Good. Anyone else for page 56? All right, we'll move on to page 57.
And just noteworthy on that one, if I may, is just line 1527, and that's just, we're just seeing a pretty big increase, especially on like field paint. So we line our fields with paint, and the price is like almost double.
So here's an inflation
Another-
item.
yeah.
And so something as simple as buying sports equipments like baseballs or soccer balls, they have gone up in price outrageously. So we tried to maintain those supply lines, those consumable type lines, but if there were circumstances that the increases were needed, we put them in. So that's a good one.
And the lines are straight.
Right.
They are really.
Right, 'cause
we
we have that.
robot.
The
We have
lines-
that
and
robot.
according to the officials, the straightest lines in the state.
Which is fantastic. And I would think they would use less paint because it would be a consistent
Consistent, yes.
laydown.
Yep.
We're
Absolutely.
minimizing the increase.
They are
And-
straight.
While we're on that subject, I need a 30-second plug. So today, Rick Wilhelmi, our Parks and Rec Director, was at the SAU talking with Randy and Dawn about the upcoming winter season and gymnasium space, et cetera. I always want to say it till I'm blue in the face, the relationship with, say, Parks and Rec, town, it's
It's all departments, Scott.
I get it, but
It's
it's all of them.
DPW,
It's library,
police,
all
it's
of them.
fire, it's
Yeah.
all of them.
It's all of them. It is the best. Like I talk to my peers, it does not occur.
Right.
And the other thing, again, I'm digressing just a little bit, but
Little
I
bit,
want to
that's
thank
okay.
people that helped me. DPW is going to do the oversight of our turf project.
Nice.
Which is going to reduce our oversight costs by, I'd say by 70%.
That's
So,
awesome.
so
Using
they're.
the town's engineer.
The town's engineer is gonna
Great.
do
Instead
the
of us paying
testing and
a
the
contractor.
oversight, rather than us having to do that. So, Scott Azona, I think is his name, he's the town engineer, and Adam Jacobs, the director. I asked them, could you do this for us? And they're like, yep, we'll do it. And it's gonna save us probably $20,000.
Adam
So-
Jacobs is a fantastic partner
Yeah.
for us. And-
I know I digressed, I apologize, but I
That's
don't have
all
the
right.
times to brag about how good our relationship is, so.
Yes.
And you should, Scott, because it's not always been
Yeah.
that way. And
Right.
that it's that good now. We used to argue between departments, and it's wonderful that it's So you
Well,
should
I
brag
think
all
it's
you
just really
can.
that ideology. It's a shared partnership. We're all
Absolutely.
serving the same constituents. It's all coming off the same.
They're all coming off the same bill.
It's all coming
Yeah.
off
Yeah.
the same bill, so let's
Absolutely.
work together and let's be as efficient as we can.
Right.
We've offered to them, if there are efficiencies that we can share, let us know. We're happy to do it.
Definitely.
But it's good, if I may, it's good to acknowledge that
Yes,
publicly.
absolutely.
And actually using names and department, when things so good happen,
Mm-hmm.
it's a nice thing to give those kudos to the specific
Yes.
people and departments. So
Definitely.
It's, thank you to all of them.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so that was page 56, so we'll move on to page 57, which is more equipment.
Yeah, that was
and-
57 was the one where.
Was that the one that we just
Yeah, that was the
did?
one we're seeing the increase in
Okay.
athletics.
All right, so now we'll go on to 58.
And this is guidance, and there really wasn't anything.
Yep.
That jumped out at that one. We saw some in other schools, headsets, another thing, but
Mm-hmm.
at Mountain View, they're, again, more or less status quo.
Okay.
Same thing with speech.
So we'll go on to 59, yeah, which is speech and benefits and stuff.
And do we have hired staff, or are we still contracting?
We have both.
Both,
We have
okay.
both, and I would just share with the board, I think the board is aware, hiring speech remains probably our most challenging hire, by and large. It's, they are impossible to find, and we're lucky that we have great speech pathologists.
And if I may interject, the Department of Labor, Federal Department of Labor has put out a new rule for comment in the Federal Register that's going to redefine the method of determining what a contractor is, whether they're a contractor or an employee.
With respect to things like hours, flexibility, yeah, those are. and-
Right now, it's very, there's two tests. They're gonna increase it to 7. And it's gonna be interesting. I haven't studied it enough yet, but only
Yeah.
enough to say, I'm looking at some of our budget and I
It
said,
makes you nervous.
yes and no, because right now we're paying this level, and are we ever gonna get anybody, or they're just not gonna bother? Are they gonna have to work for someone and be an employee of that other company and change the method? I'm sure there's gonna be some smart accountants
Yeah.
finding a way, but it doesn't look like it's gonna get easier.
It's too bad.
Yeah.
That is too bad.
Yep.
All right, so moving on to page 60, this is school library and a little bit more speech. Insurance benefits and stuff. Supplies.
May I just ask a
Yeah, sure, go ahead, Jen.
How is the library program going with the way we've had to?
So I'll give a general remark, and then I'll let Mrs. Kohler speak to it, who has much more knowledge. Our library program at the middle school, we have drastically changed over the last probably, 8 years or so. Mrs. Kohler will remember with fondness, I had challenged her with a number of things I'd like to see the library improve, and they exceeded my expectations. The library media specialist we have is very talented. We have 2 assistants in that program, and the library is open before school and after school for any students to be in there to access materials, technology, have a quiet place to study or work. So I think it's going really well. Wendy?
I concur with what you're saying. I think having it open before and after school has been huge for our middle school students, not only for access for some of our students who don't have computers at home or printers at home, but because we also offer makerspace and other activities for kids to be able to be
Right.
engaged after school hours. Like Mr. Bulkey mentioned, our library media specialist in there is spectacular. She's great at the technology portion, so she, beyond teaching the research project to students, she's very active on her Schoology course that she has for students to be able to access, but she also provides a lot of professional development for our teachers as well, because she is so tech savvy. So it's going swimmingly well.
Thank you.
And I would say it wasn't all that many years ago when I would do walkthroughs at Mountain View, the library was really underutilized. And it would often not be a place where I would see a lot of kids or classes, and that's really not the case anymore. So
Good.
it's much more utilized before school, after school. I think it's gone really well.
Right, that's good. All right, so is everybody good on page 60? We can move to 61.
So 61, I have to explain. In line 1627, you're going to see a $5,000 increase, which is rather substantial. So what happened was, at both Goffstown High School and Mountain View, we use a subscription service, which is called Gale, and those are a long list of online, databases for reference and research. And Stephen Bourget got involved in this, and what he determined is we had some overlap. So they each had their own subscriptions. So Steve was able to purchase a district subscription, which then gives us even more databases. It's a couple of $1,000s more in totality, but it's way more comprehensive. So now it's more of a district one. So now we have to share the cost between Goffstown High School and Mountain View Middle School. And Goffstown High School is paying the lion's share of the Gale subscription. And now this is just trying to level set that combined expense. So just so you're aware of that.
Scott, may I also add,
Yeah.
so the middle school's going from having 3 subscriptions to 7, which is the same that the high school has. What's also nice about this is when we were able to make that purchase together, in Schoology, there's like a button for students to be able to press, to be able to get to those research materials at both the high school and the middle school level. It was going to be really difficult to link with only having those 3 subscriptions. They would have been separate buttons for students. So it's a lot better. There's more ease for students to be able to utilize it as well.
And we continue to need to model and to
Yeah.
teach kids how to research.
Absolutely.
There is a whole lot more than just Googling something.
Right.
And for students to learn how to access the research, the literature base, to be ethical users of information, that they're finding very credible research journals, that's where we need them.
And then just go drop down a few more, you'll see a decrease of 605. In Steve's review of the budget this year, he spent a lot of time on those media licenses. It was, so, and the reason why we're able to take that one away is because it's already at the district level. So we're trying to, whenever we do this whole budget process, it's as you know, there's like a couple of thousand lines. So you're constantly trying to clean it up. There's movement in between schools, there's consolidations, and so this is, again, just one of those efforts for Steve to say, okay, we already have it budgeted somewhere else, so we removed it.
Okay, thank you, Scott. All right, so we'll move on to page 62, if everybody's good. Questions on 62? All right, we can move on to 63.
So, again, you want to know sometime, I know Ginny, you always ask this question, what was, so line 1694, when we talk about miscellaneous expenditure, so it's very important, as you know, to celebrate success and accomplishments at our schools. And so that's the line in which we do it, and that's the recognition ceremony. So it's also police coverage, sound systems, honors dinners, you name it. That's a line that next year, the year after, we're going to have to kind of bump that out. I mean, bump it up. It's not sustainable to keep that level funded year after year after year because typically when you're the one who has put these things on, it's costly. You get some donations from Mountain View Partnership or PTAs, et cetera, but the reality of it is that some of these things are, police details, whatever, rental of equipment. These are hard costs, and they are going up. But we level funded it this year. But again, next year, probably going to have to bump
And
that.
can I just say that that's not the function of our parents' associations to be funding things like that. They really need to be doing enrichment things for the kids.
Agreed.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's always been
Yes.
the function of
It's
them.
not to supplant
Yeah,
budget items.
and I hate to see them doing budget items when they should be doing field trips or assemblies or, you know, those kinds of things for kids and not budget items. That's our responsibility. No offense, Scott, I didn't
It's okay. I'm not, I
mean
don't
to
have
jump
any-
on you on that.
All right, so if we're good with 62, we can move to 63. That's just more dues and,
Huh?
We just do 63.
I don't know. I think so.
The Mountain View recognition.
Yeah, I jumped to that one, yeah, so. yeah.
all right, we can move to 64, because we kind of talked a little bit about 63 already.
Yeah, so on 64, I wanted just to highlight line 1713. It's an increase of $1,500, and that's largely, I looked back at the actuals, and then I had to bump it up, and we irrigated the lower fields, by the way, which look a lot better. And we'll put more attention into that in terms of, so what we're not going to spend on some fertilization here on this field, we'll be able to pivot a bit. But I just got the water bill, and it was about $3,600. So, oh yeah, I mean, it's typically $5,000 to do fields, you know, so I had budgeted $4,000, so I think hopefully we'll be pretty good, you know, with that. So that's, again, because we put something new in, it's kind of like a moving target, but I feel pretty good there. So that's why you have that increase. And on that page as well, just looking through some of the maintenance items that we do, we were able to lower that just a tad bit based upon actuals as well. But these are all the things that we do pretty much at all of our schools in terms of whether it be elevator maintenance or inspecting roofs, those types of things.
So just speaking on that line, if you will, Scott, I'm looking at our actuals where they've been significantly under $10,000 for the past 3 years.
What line are you looking at?
The same line that Scott was just...
17, 18?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if I'm looking at the actuals page, which is the other slide on page 56, it's line 1218, if anybody wanted to follow along. I understand you're saying that we need to increase it by 1,500, but if I'm looking at our actuals, our highest actual was a little under $10,000 3 years ago.
Right, and that's why I'm figuring that we could be with the water. I think we're going to be upwards of $14,000 to $15,000 when we add the water in.
So we did not water the fields the last 3 years.
No.
So
Right.
it's not.
We don't
in the
water
budget
them.
number. It's
Now
on
we
the
do.
actuals.
It's on the actuals.
Right.
And now it's.
Now we do, now we have
Yeah.
irrigation.
The only way we could water that lower field, we have one singular, what's like a water cannon, and it was extremely labor intensive to set up, so it just didn't get used very much. And unfortunately, the field suffered.
The fields
for
are a
it.
mess, yeah.
Right,
And now we put the irrigation in. so
Yeah.
right,
Yeah,
Just turn on the spigot.
exactly.
yeah. Are you good, Jared, or?
I think it's good, it's just, it's one of those, we have to make
Explain to
sure
the
that...
budget committee. Yep.
Explain it to say that, you know, during the quote-unquote COVID years, we didn't water the fields.
Right.
And this is going back to normalcy, and this is an increase in normalcy because our water prices are also increasing as well.
Right.
So, you know, it's a messaging thing that we have to be very careful on.
Well, and the irrigation was put in.
Yeah, we put the additional irrigation on
Right.
that field because we didn't use the water cannon.
Right.
So even before COVID, it was very rare that they watered that field.
Right.
So
We
we're,
had-
before COVID, we were spending $10,000. During the COVID years, we were spending five
Yeah,
to
he's looking at the
6,000.
actuals.
Yes, and it's a good question to find out what did we spend the 9771 in 2020 on? Was the water cannon being used, or did we have a leak?
No, it's hard to say. A lot of times,
Oh, yeah,
I can't point back to 3 years, I just don't remember, but there have been instances where, oh my God, this particular field, I'll give you a good example. I remember a few years ago, and I don't know if this was it or not, but the baseball and the softball fields were like in pretty rough shape, so they tried to fertilize it and water it more, and they did use that water cannon and try to get and spend more money, on that. So I don't know if that's the reason why it was done 3 years ago, but those are sometimes, you see a field is in a rough shape, or I remember there was a situation, and I think it was because of football used it late, and then we had to like really get it back, so they fertilized it, had to water it more, and try to get it back for baseball season. So those things do happen.
Does we continually have to repair in front of the field hockey nets as well?
Yes.
They always have that. Yeah.
Because they weren't taken care of, they were always muddy and unsafe, really, for the players.
So that's been a perennial issue. Yeah. Yep. I just don't know. I can't speak to Jared, like why in that particular, Dan, why in that year we had $9,700 and every other year was like 6 or 7. But I know that we've had to do field repairs, and when you do that, you have to overseed, fertilize it, water it more, and that's when you do take the water cannon out. Maybe they just did that particular year. I just don't know for sure.
Well, that's counter to what we're talking about, though, because if we did that back in 2020, so we had to overwater the fields because of fertilizing or for seeding, then we went back to normal when we were spending $6,000 a year. So it's going to be a hard sell to say, instead of spending $6,000 a year, now we have to spend $15,000.
No, because what you had was you also had 2 COVID years where you didn't play spring sports, you didn't play,
Well, that's the question. So we didn't water the fields during COVID.
We typically don't water the fields at all.
And part of that is a labor need. So in order to water those fields, it's a big, heavy piece of equipment with a big, this is not like think about a
Tons of labor.
kind of, sprinkler.
We're not talking labor. We're talking the actual cost of water.
But what I'm saying, Jared, is part of the reason we didn't water is we don't often have an extra custodian who has all kinds of time to go down, put the cannon out there, let it go for a half an hour, move it to another location, let it go. We just don't have that personnel. And so that's part of the reason it didn't get watered.
And on the flip side, it's water/sewer. Now, at Mountain View, it's septic. So, in some of those COVID years when you didn't have kids in the school as much, you didn't have the need to pump as frequently. So there's
you didn't
reasons.
consume as much water.
You didn't consume as much, and you didn't
Right.
have as much waste on the other side of it. So there's always reasons for some of that.
Oh, I know that the way that this is sitting, it's going to be a prime line item to cut.
Yeah, and
So-
then if that were the case, I would then tell the budget committee, then don't do any cuts on line
No, that-
17, 18, actually increase it, because the actuals might support that too, so.
That's fine, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying, they're going to look at this and be like, hey, our actuals are half of what we're asking for, and you're trying to increase it. What's the justification to increase it? Now, if we're saying because we have the irrigation, we're going to now water, and we didn't before, that would be one thing.
Yeah.
But
That's what I said.
we'll just need Dick or somebody to kind of articulate that with us from the
Yeah.
precinct, so.
We didn't water the fields and we didn't flush the toilets.
Right, because of COVID.
Just being plain English.
Because there were no children.
Yeah, but.
They weren't here.
What's the septic that we do every year? What's the actuals for that? That question's going to come up too.
Oh, which is not in this line, so.
It is in this line, that's a sewer line.
Yeah, it's under
So
the
sewer-
Oh, look at that, it is.
So
Yeah.
Scott, maybe you could pull back a few more additional years of actuals for this particular account, because I think if you go further back in time, you'll likely see.
Yeah, honestly,
more
like if I'm there, I'll just do it in real time if it comes up, because I can pull it up on e-finance, so.
Okay,
It's
thank
kind
you,
of a crappy
Jared.
question, Jared, but I'll do it for you. But I'll-
He's being prepared.
He's anticipating.
Right,
Yes,
he's done, he knows what is gonna happen, and we appreciate that. All right, so page 65,
So this is where 1739, line 17, this is one where Randy wanted $15,000 more, but again, trying to be practical.
What, if I may, what
Yeah,
was it
go
that he
For
asked
repairs.
that we're not going to do now?
No, it's just that, we do repairs, but as, you know, as the superintendent and I have articulated, if we exceed this, we have to do the repairs. We just have to find other places within the
okay.
budget, but
Okay.
just trying to be.
But a good example, Scott, is something like the painting that's included in
Correct,
this.
yeah.
So if there's additional money in a line like this, we would
We might not do painting.
You know, paint extra hallways. We would
Right.
paint a larger common space like the hilltop or the, you know, the gymnasium. And if we don't have that money, we scale back.
Yep.
So we say, by the way, Wendy wanted to paint the whole place. Wendy painted all the exterior doors, she wanted to do trim, she wanted to do inside, she wanted everything to match. We had trim that was multiple colors. And so Wendy wanted everything to be consistent and to look sharp, but we had to tell her at times, we don't have enough.
Right.
We're gonna have to do this over, you know, a couple of years, and that's what we do here.
All right, moving on to page 66. This is our propane and oil and more grounds
Yep.
maintenance. And then the top of page 67 finishes up the middle school.
So just to echo what I said before, to
Yeah.
reiterate, I mean, you see $35,000 of new spending on an $11 million budget. I mean, it's pretty conservative, you know, in that respect, so.
Right. So is everybody good with the middle school? We can move on to the high school. Go ahead, Jared.
I want to make sure, because I know it's come up
Yep.
from several parents, the athletics for busing at the middle school. That's coming back into the budget, or it's been in the budget.
It's always
but
been in the budget.
We haven't had any actuals.
Right.
We haven't been able to run any buses.
Can't run the buses.
Yeah.
But hoping to
Yeah.
next year,
In
So-
fact, we are hoping to be able to run some athletic transportation
this year.
as soon as this year, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, there are more bus drivers that are coming online, so we're hoping that we don't lose bus drivers, but as of now, we've got every route covered with an assigned driver, and now they also
Hold
have
on.
like,
Every route covered within a reduced model.
of course, right.
So we budget for, and we're contracted for 22 buses. We don't have 22 buses
no.
on the road. If we could, we would have
We would do it.
22 buses on the road tomorrow. So as we're able to get more drivers, we would absolutely put more buses back on the road, and it'll drive the costs up, but it will also drive the numbers down, it'll shorten the runs. I think that not having middle school athletic transportation is an incredible hardship for parents.
It is, yeah.
It's sometimes easy for a parent to say, oh, you have a game in Derry, I'll meet you at your game. It's a whole different thing to say, you need to pick me up in Goffstown and bring me to Derry for my game. That is really hard for most families.
Yeah, absolutely.
So hopefully within the next month or so, we're looking at having the potential of training coaches and other people on driving buses. So it's a possibility, and the union has given us the green light to pursue this as a pilot program. But in Mountain View especially, if we can get some of the coaches to actually drive the bus, then it's a possibility that we can deal with that, Jared, but we just don't have the drivers, you know, at this particular time. But I get the emails from parents too. It's like, hey, this is not right, and I totally get it.
This is part of our contracted service, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we can't even change this number because it's part of a contract.
Correct.
So the reason I'm looking at is, I'm trying to remember when COVID happened, you know, way back for our fiscal budget year. You know, last actuals we had was 13,000, but that was at the start of COVID, right?
Yeah, yep.
So
you're
we
exactly right.
lost all of our spring sports.
Yep.
At that time.
And I think it's part of the team-building process is going on the bus,
Right.
you know?
Yep.
Sitting, remembering your stuff, all of that is part of being on a team. So I think kids lose by not having the bus service going.
Right.
I would agree.
All right, so we're finished with the middle school. So we can start with the high school, which is also on page 67.
And on that one, similar MVMS, at line 1796, that's the
Yeah,
homework
the
den.
homework den.
And again, that number was double and we scaled it back.
So is this for a new, for both of these, I know we're talking about the high school, are we actually hiring somebody for this,
Or
or?
we have a teacher or two
In it right now.
Right.
that does it right now.
Well, right now, we have one teacher.
One teacher, yeah.
Last year, we had two teachers. So we essentially cut the program in half because we're now going to be adding that tutor.com support for parents.
So this is just the salary we're paying that teacher additionally?
One teacher instead of two.
Yeah.
We're giving them an extra amount of money for
Yes.
this? Because I doubt we're having a teacher for $6,000 for the whole year.
We are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not every day, that's
Yeah,
why.
and it's-
Okay.
and it's only about an hour and 25 minutes, depending on the day, so it's a short amount of time. But it's, after school, you can go and get help from a really smart, certified teacher who can, sit down and work with kids. That's what's happening.
If I could follow up
Yeah,
on
go
this,
ahead.
why wouldn't this be considered a stipend?
It could be looked at that way, and I think if we structured it and we haven't done it that way, we've just paid it on straight time. So,
Okay.
hour worked, hour pay.
Okay.
That's how we've done it.
Ginny?
Originally, this homework den was set up to be like a skill, studying skills and all of that. Is any of that being done, or is it just helping with homework
I would
now?
say some. So with some unique students, the teacher who's working in that program would have the ability to work on whatever particular needs a student might have. It might be organization, it might be kind of some of those, test strategies, executive functioning kinds of
yeah.
stuff. But it's primarily set up as a homework support, and also things like writing, of kids who have writing assignments, et cetera.
Okay.
And this is a program that we've had, I remember when we started it, because I was in the special ed role, we funded it with special ed grant money for years.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Yep.
Because I still think that there's a need for that kind of thing.
I do too.
A lot of kids need those
I do
kinds
too,
of skills.
and again, the tutor.com is new for us. We've kind of signed the dotted line, we haven't gotten to roll it out yet, it's coming soon.
Yeah, we actually have our administrative onboarding call next Wednesday with Stephanie Close from tutor.com, where we're going to make a timeline and things like that, but we've actually done all of the testing phase through Schoology to make sure that we're all set to go. So I would expect that we'll be starting in November.
Awesome.
And we'll roll it out to parents. I want
Absolutely.
all parents to know
Yes.
that this is available to them.
Yep. Thank you, Ginny. Go ahead, Jared.
So the fringe new items that we have, starting on line 1802 and 1803 and below, are these additional costs associated with paying that individual more? So like the $27 more for life insurance,
Yeah.
$2 more?
Yes.
So this is a situation where, because we are increasing a quote-unquote rate of pay, we have to also increase the fringe benefits associated with that.
Well, you always
FICA
have.
retirement.
Oh, yeah, so
You
this.
always have retirement, FICA,
Yep.
workers, all those things are associated with. Anytime you have a new salary-related expense, there's always those 4 or 5 things that trail along with it.
So we aren't just paying another individual $6,650, it's also included the fringe benefits, which could be $9,000. So this again,
No, because
No,
they
no.
already have the majority of medical insurance already taken care of. This would be the 7.65 FICA.
yeah,
Couple of
retirement.
pennies.
19 point.
Retirement is.
But hold on, guys,
19%.
if you look at 1792, this is a whole collection of teachers. It's not just that homework den.
Right.
So it's
Right.
that whole, it's $5 million worth of salary that those related benefits are associated with. It's not just the homework den.
Right.
I'm not tracking that one.
It should be the
if you-
$7,328 worth of. If you take
Yeah,
the
so-
FICA and you divide by .0765, you should get the total.
That's not new spend, though, if it's a.
But look at, for example, line 1806. There's a new spend of $1,398. That is not from homework den. That is from the $1 million of retirement that's already in that line.
But is
Follow
that-
me?
No, because wouldn't that be part
Scott,
of the
can you
default
explain
budget?
this? This is not just
so-
homework then. Homework then is $6,000.
I'll tell you like that in a second, so just 66.
Because that new wouldn't be new if it's part of a contract, it would be part of the default for a pay increase.
What's our percentage right now?
can you-
18?
Do you want me to
Yeah,
explain?
go ahead, Scott.
So it is attributed to the 60, roughly the 6,650, and the amount above that, the
678.
678.
Yeah.
Because your retirement for teachers is almost 20%.
Right.
So if you have new spending of 6,600, you're going to have retirement around that $1,300 and change, because you have to add on roughly 20%. Then you have your FICA, which Dan said before, is 7.65%. So, I
Maybe
always
about
use the
28.
general rule of thumb of like, you kind of have to add almost, I use 30%. So like with a teacher, because you've got the retirement, your FICA, unemployment, workers' comp, and it gets pretty close to that. So, those are all accurate.
So again, reinforces, why aren't we gonna do a stipend where it's just a one pay amount instead of trying to hit all these other lines?
Stipends get the
Stipends
same
would do that
They
too?
do,
Okay.
they do, because it's part of like their base compensation,
Yeah.
because it's a,
Goes on the W-2.
Yeah.
It goes on the W-2, so.
The thing that would be tricky about making that a stipend is the number of students fluctuates. So we'd have to come up with a way to do some kind of like an average.
Right.
Because part of the formula that we use is how much time, how many students. And on one day, it could be 3 students, it could be 9 students, it could be 15, but it all fluctuates.
Would it be fair to say the number of students depends on the number of time? So if there are 3 students, you're not going to be there an hour and a half, potentially.
You may not be.
Right.
But you could.
You may
So
not.
I'm trying to relate
Yeah.
the number of people versus the time. If it's an hour and 25 minutes and there are no students.
They're gonna leave.
They're going to leave.
Right.
Brian, may I also mention that it's run very differently at the middle school? There is drop-in here at the high school, but at the middle school, students sign a contract with their parents, and they're assigned there for either 2 or 3 days a week, so that we have that accountability because of the age of our students, of where they are. And we're able to have our homework den person communicating with families about what was done during homework den, what needs to be finished. So it's a little bit different where we do, because we have those contracts with families, we know the amount of kids that are in there, but the high school, it very much runs as a drop-in, so I do think it would be more difficult at the high school to do that.
And I would say
Yeah.
there are times that we do schedule kids. So
Yes.
there are students that are failing classes, there are students
Yes.
that do not have this as optional for
Yep.
them.
Right.
But we tend to give, obviously, more choice with the older kids.
And there's also a little bit more resources here at the high school, in the sense of you have Goffstown High School Honor Society that
Yeah.
also helps with tutoring.
Every
Every
block,
day.
which
Every
there's
block.
tutoring available through the honor
Which you
Starting
don't
at 7
have
in the
at
morning.
Mountain View.
Yeah.
So there's a difference there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Jared, when you said $9,000, you were referring to salaries
And
plus
benefits.
the additional
Total
costs?
compensation.
Yeah,
Total
The
compensation.
costs, okay.
Yes,
I
that's
thought
right.
you were referring to
An
Just-
additional
Gotcha.
9,000.
additional.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
Over the salaries. So, okay.
All right, so moving on to page 68. You have a,
Gonna ask the question.
go ahead.
Now that we've had a terrific donation to the high school for those 3D printers,
Printers, yeah.
are we gonna have to modify any of the technical program equipment?
Maybe an
line
increase in supplies.
Yeah.
If we're using more, printer material.
Yeah, like
but-
more of the plastics or
Like
the
more of the
polymers
plastic
and
stuff.
stuff?
So that would be in one of the 611 lines.
And we
So
do have, I've been in Tim's classroom.
we already have multiple.
I think we have multiple 3D
And at
printers
the middle
already.
school,
so-
we have 3
Yeah.
3D printers at the middle school. So we've got a few of these.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's possible that you can get more done within a class rather than stack them up.
Yeah, so
and
you
have
might
them
use
done
the
later.
same amount of material, but it's
Right.
spread, it's
It's
being
spread
done more
quicker, yes.
quickly.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, any other questions on page 68? If not, we'll move to 69. Just more supplies for classes, science, music, tech.
we still at the high school?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, this is all high school.
Okay, so is that PE supplies, the 2,800, due to the change in the programs? we've
Yes.
okayed?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, we can move to page 70 if everyone's good. This is books and materials.
Yeah, I just wanted to, just for Jared and Ellen's benefit, line 1874, which is our books.
Yeah.
If you look at the actuals in this line, we've been about $20,000 underspent over the last 3 years. These have been our COVID years. And if you recall, we had a lot of IT needs. And we put the brakes on buying books and dealing with all the technology and Chromebooks and all that other stuff. So we used this line to deal with IT type issues. If you look at the bottom of that page, which is line 1890, we are introducing a new AP Economics course, which you approved, part of
Yep.
C&E, and there's going to be about $15,000 of textbooks associated with that. And then, as you can see, there's just the vocabulary books are consumable, so maybe they should be in a supply type line, but that's also where it's, these are workbooks, so it's not, so that's an ongoing type of thing. But then a lot of it's like replacements and that, things of that nature. But I wanted to let you know, especially for Jared and Ellen, if people are looking strictly at actuals, that is the reason. Is we budget transferred, or we used monies for books on IT.
And moving on to 71, there's more textbooks of the course we just approved tonight.
And one of them is a math cycle.
What did you say, math?
Math cycle.
Math, we're looking to
And a
use
whole new
an ESSER
program.
grant. So we're looking at the math curriculum, and Wendy is doing that as we speak, so we don't have anything just yet. I mean, I think we're still exploring the different.
But what we do know is the current program that we're using is being sunsetted. It's not
Right.
being supported any longer. So the online learning materials, the good news is, I think the original number that we included in the ESSER grant to look at the elementary math program, that number came from my head, essentially, and I overshot it a little bit, which is a good problem to have, because now that we have books that we need to replace, or programs that we need to replace at the middle school and the high school, we're gonna have enough money to do it. So that 400 grand will let us look at a new comprehensive elementary program, and then to replace the programs that are no longer being supported, because at this point, they're 10, 11 years old.
Right. All right, so moving on to page 71.
And again, some of this is for Jared and for Ellen, line 1908. So we are on a replacement cycle for like labs and equipment. This particular budget year, so next year, it's these computers right here in front of you. Those are approaching 10 years old. And I believe that the school is looking to go with laptops and carts versus this, and then kind of configuring what this space kind of looks like. Right now, it's kind of classroom type setting. It would be more than likely laptops and different configuration.
Right.
So that's what's in the budget for that.
Scott, just for this item, is this on CIP? Because the amount of money? So this is actually going to knock off some things on our CIP as well.
There's a few things. I mean, this is one of the few things, Jared, that is, programmed into our budget. Most of them are not. Yeah. Bless you.
Bless you.
I know that sometimes confuses people to say, wait a minute, it's on CIP, so don't you have to use your CRF fund for it? But
Right.
this situation where we have it in our regular operating budget because we do it so often
Yeah.
with the volume that we have.
All right, we can move to page 72.
Oh, can I go back on one?
Yeah.
On page 71, if you go to line 1911, I'm sorry, that'd be 1911 or 1912.
Okay. That's
I went
the-
back to what says replacement compressor, 40 years old, welding. there was, I have to look back at my notes, but I bumped out what they needed, what they requested, because this compressor was so old. I'm gonna probably, there'll be something else in its place, and I'll let you know at the next meeting. I just forgot, I'd have to look at my notes, but we have to replace this compressor in order for the program to go, so we might have to do it out of this year.
Okay.
So I might have to, the amount is gonna be fine, but what we spend it on, the note, might be different, because I think we had to swap what we were gonna do this year for the compressor, and then do what we were gonna do this year. So I just wanted to disclose that, so that if you see a compressor in your manifest,
Yep.
you know, like, well, why is it in your budget? Because we had to swap, because it can't it failed inspection, and we have to do it this year, so I'm moving, Randy and I are moving stuff around.
Okay. All right, going back to 72, if everybody's good with that, we can move to 73. You can move to 74.
Just a couple of ones there. Line 1996, again, for Jared and Ellen's benefit, we reduced this $3,600, and that's because when we approved our teacher's contract, if you recall, this is now part of the co-curricular stipends, so in doing so, we removed those two positions that were in there. They're now part of the co-curricular stipend line. And now, all of the performing arts is now fully, it's funded, and it's part of the co-curricular budget, and the revenues from the ticket sales will be used as local revenue to offset, our budget. So, it took us a long time, but
we did it.
That's why that's happening, so.
Took a long time.
Yeah.
Long time. And that
And
overflows.
Mr. Gross pushed it over the finish line.
Yep. And that overflows into page 75 also. And this is more general supplies and dues at the high school.
Performing arts needs no supplies?
What number, 2010?
Yeah.
That's all part of the, Scott, there's no
It's-
number.
There's no number there per se, but the numbers do, add up, so I wouldn't,
Okay.
some of the, we have performing arts in other supplies, and we look at it kind of in totality, so.
Yeah, on the page 74, there's performing arts workshops for 2000. All right, if everybody's good on 75, we can move to 76. Water, sewer, more equipment, rentals, athletics.
Athletics bumped up, there's no doubt about it. So we have a bit of an increase in the officials and assigners, police details, and athletic training. So those things have gone up. And I think we
Go ahead,
also
Jared.
had increase in our neuropsych, our concussion type
Yeah.
testing, those types of things. And then, same thing on line 2042, increased costs of ice time, and going back to our favorite subject of water sewer, the
Pool
portable
rental.
toilet, those have gone up like a massive amount on those.
And the pool rental.
And the pool rental, yep.
Yep. Jared, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I gotta find it now. Just going back to the prior page, 75, again, dues and
Yep.
fees. I'm looking at our actuals, and we had a significant jump one year, and I just couldn't recall why. Was it because of the software we got for the,
Could it be NEASC?
yeah? that's-
So we had a couple years ago, we had both at the middle school and the high school, we were up for our New England Association of School and Colleges accreditation.
Right.
And when that happens, that is a very costly year. It involves an external team coming in, they're all volunteers, but we have to
Again?
pay.
Is that, that's coming up in 2014? Or
2014.
2024?
Every 10 years, right?
It's every 10
Every
years.
10.
Yeah.
So I can't remember. I don't think quite that soon. How long ago did we do the middle school, Wendy?
2 or 3 years ago.
Seems like it was just a couple
So
of
we're
years
actually,
ago.
I don't want to.
4 years is our 5-year report to
next
This might be a
year.
spoiler alert.
No,
but
no,
We're
no.
actually looking to get both schools perhaps on the same cycle. That would allow us to have kind of an economy of scale a bit, but we're not quite there yet.
I might be confusing people. So if I'm looking at line 2019, I got that one right.
Yeah.
On page 75.
Yep.
Our proposed budget's 11,475, but if I'm looking at the actuals for that, for prior years, we're talking $1,500, $866. This is on the actuals, this is on page 62, line 1354.
Yeah.
So we had a significant jump there, and I think this might be due to royalties that
Yes,
we
it
were
is,
talking about?
royalties,
That's
yep,
the royalties?
exactly,
Yeah.
that's exactly what it is.
Okay.
70, it's like, I don't remember the exact number, but I thought it was like $7,000 for royalties and fees for all these different.
But even though the expenses are going up, we're gonna, like you said, get some of the ticket sale door money
Right,
for
but
revenues
keep in mind,
to
this was never
offset.
part of, this was this effort to get performing arts into the budget.
Okay.
And then this year, and then next year, it's, those royalties and fees are in there. I expect in the please don't quote me on it. I think we're gonna have around $15,000 a year coming in revenue from the performing arts. We're trying to balance that with not charging, $15, $20 for a kid to watch a performance. So we're trying to keep those performing arts entrance fees to a rate where families can go and it's affordable. And with all of that, I think, when we do that, I think we're gonna generate, between all of our different productions, about $15,000 a year.
So just for this board, because some of us might not remember, and I didn't remember until Scott started talking about it, this was a big battle that we had last year with some people in the budget. So this might just come out again if they start looking at the actuals and be like, why did we jump?
Yeah.
It's because of the decisions that we made last year that they agreed to.
Right.
That we had this spike, but we're also getting additional revenues to offset those expenses.
Not all of them dollar for dollar,
Yeah.
And
but we
the other
are.
thing I would add is the performing arts, from a cost perspective, are way under athletics.
Yeah,
So
there's
when
no
we-
transportation,
when you
there's
look
no
at it in
athletic trainer, there's no
totality,
ice time, there's none of that.
All the performing arts are
Yeah.
a really good value.
Yeah,
and
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
absolutely.
Exceptionally
yeah.
important to those kids.
And there's many, many students that participate in those programs
Right.
as well.
And Dan is doing the Nutcracker this year, which I think is phenomenal.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Careful, Dan, they'll pull you in. No, really.
All right,
It's always
so
fun.
we're done with 76. We can move on to 77. This is still more athletics. All right, if everybody's good, we can move on to page 78.
All right, so 78 requires, again, explanation, line 2094.
Thank you.
So with our GAP director, Kurt McDermott, Kurt has done just a phenomenal job in having relationships with the state. And because we're offering course credits on our programs, all of the teacher salaries that we use that we expend are reimbursable by the state as long as you provide credit. So we're providing credit. So that 26,000 plus all of the retirement, et cetera, is coming off of our budget. you'll see that I did keep some dollars in the budget, just a handful of things. But for the most part, Kurt has been able to have the vast majority of the GAP program funded by the state. The only ones that they will not, that they won't do is they will not pay for his salary nor his admin support salary, and then like a few things that have to do with like their graduation, some books, like some books here and there. So that's why you'll see that there's still a little bit of money, but nothing like it was before, and that's all Kurt. So Kurt did all of the research and the phone calls, and you can see
conceptualized a different way to structure the
a different way of doing
program.
it. New set of eyes. He's brilliant anyway,
He's
and you'll see that he is probably well over $30,000 to $35,000 reduced from the budget because of his creativity.
All right, thank you, Scott. Go ahead, Ellen, you had a question?
I heard state funds this program, and I also heard salaries reimbursed. In order to be reimbursed, don't we have to budget for it?
No, because it's very similar to a grant. So we don't have to, this would fall under the GAP grant, and it's budgeted under the GAP grant, but we don't budget it, we don't have to budget on our end. So
if the GAP grant ever went away, it comes back in the budget?
you got it.
Okay.
Yep, that's it.
All right, so we can move on to page 79.
Did you miss me?
Oh, I'm sorry, did you have your hand up?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
You down for a
I
while.
didn't, I thought you were saying speed it up. Go ahead.
No, I was saying.
That's what this means, right? Speed it up?
Sorry.
That is what that means.
That is, but
So
I got a question.
Okay, well, the question. Go ahead, Dan.
Scott,
Yeah.
Ellen beat me to it, but you're gonna have to go a little further. How are they gonna get paid? How is a check going to get into their bank account?
No different than how we would do anything with IDEA funds, right? Where
Okay,
we lay it
how
out.
do
We
IDE
budget for the revenue.
Right.
So in the
Yeah.
GAP program, we budget for the revenue.
Where's
So-
the expense?
In the grant side,
Where's
not in the general
grant
fund side.
Is it in Fund,
It'd
20?
be Fund 22.
so Fund 22 papers we don't have,
Correct, we don't,
but it's budgeted, Ellen,
there.
in papers we don't have in front of us that's part of the federal program.
But
Right.
the revenue.
Got it. That's
The
what-
revenue
that's the
is
link we're
part
missing.
of.
Your revenue sheet.
The revenue still has to come in, but
Right.
that's why we don't actually look at it, but we should be looking at it. I've always asked for that, but I'm glad we got at least the food. But that's the complete budget, is the general fund, the federal numbers, and, do we have the federal numbers in here?
We do not have the federal numbers. We typically don't build a federal grants budget because it's pretty fluid. But
Okay.
we do know like IDEA is, used to be much higher, but now it's in the mid 500s. So we know we have that. We know we have title. The numbers fluctuate all over the place. And the one thing that we're very mindful of is we know we can't spend more than what we get in the grant.
Right.
A lot of times these grant numbers are all over the place.
Okay.
And then we have ESSER and
Sure.
and all those other ones. So
All right. Now it makes sense. It's gross appropriated, it's just not
it's
sitting in
gross
this
appropriated, but it's
fund
not
account.
funded. It's not appropriated in the general fund.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so if we're good, Ginny?
Scott, so all of the adult courses now are given for credit, not just the student makeup courses and the GED courses, but like the welding class and
Yes.
stuff for credit?
You can get
also?
credit for that, yeah.
Oh, very cool.
But an
I didn't
outcome of
realize.
that is if there historically had been programs like Introduction to Italian Cooking,
Right.
that might have been a community-based thing.
Okay.
Some of those are going away. And it's more focused on high school students, credit, high set, which is the new GED program. So
Right.
it's less of that kind of adult enrichment, and it's more focused on high school kids.
Okay, so,
And we didn't really have a lot of people signing up for those things.
so it's a different program
It's
altogether?
slightly different. So it's
Okay.
just less about us trying to introduce, conversational Italian to an interested community member, and it's
Okay.
more focused on high school kids and credit.
So it's less of an adult education program and more of a
Supplemental high school.
high school program?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Go ahead,
Which
Jared.
could
Oh.
include those 21 plus
Yep.
who need to get,
Right.
Oh,
Right.
for sure,
yeah.
Right.
for sure.
What page are we on?
We are on page 78, going to 79.
Sweet, 78, I'm on
Yep.
the right page then. So, general question, I'm looking at line 2088. And I, honestly, I did it when I was a senior in high school, loved them, even before that. Support the senior athletic banquet for sports. I checked the notes for our performing arts section and co-curriculars. We don't have anything comparable to that in there, at least in the
It's-
notes.
So it actually should be expanded because that athletic
It's now
banquet
one.
now includes performing arts.
It does, okay.
So and that's new. So that's only within the last 2 years, Scott?
1 or 2 years.
One year? So
Yeah.
forever, it was only athletics.
Yeah.
And then I think probably based on Mrs. McCann's input, it was expanded, that it made sense that why aren't we celebrating more than just athletics? It's
So
performing
we're
arts.
funding rap parties and things like that?
Yep.
Okay. Because I just didn't see it in the notes, and I'm like, why are we
Yeah, I
not doing
think
it
that
for the
should
other
be
groups?
added to the notes. Maybe just a note for
What
next
kind
year.
of party?
So I call it a rap party, probably the three
rap
people.
party.
yeah,
I
call
thought
it
he
something
said
different.
rap party.
Rap?
I heard grass.
Rap party?
No, there are no frat parties and no grass parties, to be clear.
But we're doing
To be
it.
clear.
That's the
It was
important
just
thing,
outside
and
the
we're
field.
funding
No,
it.
no.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so moving on to page 79.
Well, that's just the GAP program.
Yeah, it's more of that
Continuing to
stuff.
be
All
moved.
right, so we can move to page 80, this is guidance. And page 81, oh, go
On
ahead.
page 80, just
Yep.
want to make sure I understand it. For 2141,
Mm-hmm.
the new associated in there, is that for approved raises?
I don't know the answer to that. I'm gonna have to get back to you.
Okay.
Okay? That's all right?
No, that's cool. Thank you.
All right.
It seems like a small number if it is.
Yeah,
a raise.
that is
Yeah.
very
Well, it
small.
could be turnover, too.
No, that's just our school counseling coordinator, who is spectacular and has not turned over.
Right.
Okay.
All right, we can move on to page 81, which is more guidance, and then goes into health.
So here you'll see on 2172, that's the $10,000 of the sound amplification systems that you'll recall the high school spoke about.
Yep.
And again, those are primarily based upon students with 504 plans.
Right.
And Jenny, just so you know, like, I know you're the one, you typically ask, like, what did they ask? They asked for a lot more than that, but we're trying to do some of this stuff incrementally and recognizing that the better sound in our classrooms is better for all students.
It's better for
However,
They're
recognizing the cost of these things, we're trying to do things incrementally. And this one just addresses the needs of students who have these 504 plans and trying to, because we do have to then move them into different classrooms here
But
because the
Scott,
schedule is
we
different.
would identify this as kind of a new program.
Yeah.
And that this would be something we would
Yeah.
plan to continue in subsequent
Yep.
budget years.
Are we
Yeah.
gonna like do a cycle
Yes.
for
Yes.
everyone?
Yep.
Yeah,
So this
okay.
becomes, I want to disclose that this needs to be a cycle,
Right.
okay?
Yep.
Because I think it's so helpful for all kids.
Yeah.
And it's helpful for the teachers. It's
Yeah.
hard on teachers' voices and.
Go ahead, Ellen.
Having been someone who's used these, okay, I've been in rooms with them, I can't say enough for the positive impact on everybody in the classroom. I would encourage us, I think it's well worth the investment.
Right.
Would it help at board meetings?
Certainly would.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, but a lot of them are mandated through IEPs.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so-
yeah.
But your point is well taken.
I'm sure you use it.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so moving on to page 82, it's more health and speech. Page 83 is finishing up speech. We have books, and then we get into the media stuff.
And I had some, Jen Boschman is the media person now, and more than likely, again, I prepped you for Mountain View. I think this facility here is gonna look different, you know, in the years to come, and I know I've had a couple of conversations with Jennifer, you know, about that. We talked a little bit about, we talked about the furniture, we talked about some different things, so didn't do anything in the budget this year, but again, you know, next year, you know, in the years beyond, this place,
Change it up a little.
trying to address it.
Right. All right, if we're good with 83, we can move to 84. It's more media and audiovisual, parking, safety, some salaries. And if everybody's good with 84, we can move to 85.
How many, excuse me, how many
Yeah.
assistant principals we have at the high school? Three?
One.
One?
Read the next line to the right. I did the same thing.
Okay. Here we go. Thank you.
Yeah, it's just Kim McCann.
It's the curriculum coordinator, the assistant principal, and the dean of students.
So it's 3 people.
Is everybody good on page 85? Go to 86, this is all administration stuff. Dues, equipment, benefits. All right, we can move on to page 87.
So, 2349, lowered water and sewer. So if we do get the question on Mountain View, actually, I try to always look at things in like totality. I'm hoping that we'll have less, we're gonna have a turf field, less watering, and if you look at the actuals, it kind of supports that. So some of these things are moving targets, but, you know, sometimes no longer gonna have to water a turf field to the extent, you still have to water it for field hockey and some other sports, but we should see some savings there, but an increased cost at Mountain View because we have irrigation, so trying to balance things out.
Now, is
Yeah, go
there
ahead.
a specific line that is addressing the cost for the maintenance and a few things we need to do for the turf field?
No, because in speaking with St. Anselm College, I was on a call with them for like an hour and a half. I asked them that question, Justin and I asked them, and Randy, was that, hey, what do we think we're gonna see? Are we gonna see a substantial decrease because we don't have to mow anymore and we're not watering? But you still have to go and replace those granules,
Yeah,
the rubberized granules.
Yeah.
You have to still rake it. Every year you have to sanitize
Right.
it. So this, I think it, in my opinion, and we just discussed this at our
Balance out.
meeting, is that it might be slightly less. I just don't think it's gonna be dramatically less.
Okay.
Part of the project that we have, there's attachments to a tractor to rake them up and to do different things. It's included in the price, but I don't think it's gonna be a substantial savings. I think it might be a little bit less or a push, so I think we won't know for another 2 or 3
Yep.
years after we experience it, but I think we level fund it and then we recalibrate after a couple of years of experience.
I just asked because I thought it's important for the public.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you, Alan. I appreciate that. All right, let's move on to page 88. This is building maintenance.
A decrease in maintenance?
Yeah, because I moved something to another line.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, on that one, Ella, I just moved it to a different line, so that's why.
And then page 89 goes over some repairs to the high school, rentals, equipment, propane, electricity. Go ahead, Alan.
Weren't we,
What page, what number?
2387?
Okay.
Yeah.
Weren't we
Page
no
89.
longer using that?
Yeah, the way that I wanted to try to explain this I thought I explained it during the budget presentation, is that even though this year we are not using that alt ed space, that space is really good space, and it includes all utilities, et cetera. And like, as an example, there's a possibility for some of these offices that are back here, like say IT, to potentially move over there to free up and some of our other buildings. So I think it's a space that we should, and personally, that we should hold on to, because it offers us the ability to relocate. So a good example would be, like right now, we've got an IT person that's housed at the portable in front of Maple Avenue. If we have to recapture that space, that IT person's could go to alt.
Okay.
So it's that type of thing. And also, we used it, obviously we used it during COVID, but God forbid you ever had a water loss, a small fire loss, et cetera, and you need space. It's like, it's a very good opportunity for you to do that, not to mention if there's a reversal of course on alt ed, et cetera, you now have just not relinquished it. So I think our recommendation is to hold on to it. It's relatively inexpensive given the building footprint, its proximity to the high school, Maple Ave, the SAU, and let's monitor this for a year or two and move some people into that, potentially into that space, or use it as, for other means, but holding on to it for now.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Alan. All right, if everybody's good with page 89, we can move on to page 90. And then page 91 finishes up the high school with field trip stuff. anybody have any questions on the high school? All right. So what, the plan was for Monday, if
Yeah, so the
everybody's
plan
good?
is that on Monday, I'll give you a refreshed, kind of that overview summary that the superintendent pointed out, with what you would then bring forward to the budget committee. And typically, as Dan does, we have to give them what is the total appropriation, which includes the general fund budget, the food service budget, and the grants. I don't know if any of you took a look at the food service budget, or if you wanted to go over that. I will share with you that, as Megan presented to you, I wasn't here that particular night, but she presented to you that we are seeing increases in food costs, et cetera. A lot of those things are kind of outside of her control. Depending upon how things go with our support staff contract, that's not in this budget, but it would add to this budget should that support staff contract pass. But as you can tell from working with Megan, well, maybe not you, Caroline, but she does a great job, making sure she manages her expenses and revenues like you wouldn't believe. So I have no reservations about her particular budget, so.
And we have a healthy fund balance.
Yes.
So we do have a need for a budget meeting Monday night?
Monday night, there is a board meeting.
Board meeting.
Yeah, we're gonna do something different.
Because Jared and his group is giving a presentations from the facilities committee.
Or a facility? Okay.
We are going to have the budget approval.
Okay.
We are actually doing second reads Monday night instead of waiting until November, because some of them we need to move forward. And I'm not sure what else is on that agenda.
The only other thing that we hadn't talked to you about is I mentioned in my superintendent's report on Monday that we got the state assessment system results. Mrs. Kohler has put together a little bit of an overview. I don't know if we'll be ready to present that or not, but we've started to begin analyzing the data and want to share how it looks.
Okay.
And spoiler alert, looks really good.
So there won't be any committee updates that night. That'll go into November, because we've already done that. And
Other than
approving.
the presentation from the facility.
The presentation is the main thing for Monday night, and the budget.
Right.
And
we
at
wanna-
6 o'clock.
We want to
6
keep the
o'clock.
agenda as short as we can.
Yes.
So the focus is on the discussion
Absolutely.
about facilities.
Yep.
Okay.
But we are going to approve all those minutes that are in your packet and stuff for tonight. So,
Thank you.
Ginny, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I've been just kind of thinking about it in the budget process. We allocated some teachers from the high school, placed them other places, and also getting rid of the alt-ed program that we had before. Is that going to do anything to our NES&C
No.
program? Because I know sometimes they're really kind of picky about a lot of
No,
things.
and in fact, I would share that an off-site alt-ed program is really a rarity. There are very, very few school districts that have that additional program, so no, that will not impact accreditation in any way.
Okay.
No, we're not worried about that.
Changing the courses and getting rid of the teachers at the high school is not going to be an issue with?
No, in fact, because, so of the teachers, we put them back in the building, so we actually increased, the number of staff here in the building.
Okay.
Yep, so we'll be okay with that.
Thanks, Ginny. All right. So any other, someone else, Jared? Sorry.
There was a discussion at the end of Monday's board meeting where we were talking about salary pools and the information being presented. Have we been able to go back to Kate to have that
Yes,
discussion?
in fact, we did today.
We did.
Mr. Gross.
So, there are pros and cons. It can be done either way. So just for the board, just to reiterate, and for Ellen especially, who wasn't here the other night, the question was you have a salary pool, and then you also have that redistribution of last year's salary pool, all right? And the way that Kate has done it historically is that she keeps the salary pool in the default, and then she does the redistribution from last year in the new column, okay? Dan and Jared asked, well, why don't we do it the exact opposite? Why don't you put the redistribution from last year's salary pool in the default, because it's a budget that already passed, and then put your salary pool in the new column? You can do that, okay? Kate can do that. One of the things that we chatted about was if there is a temptation to say to cut that salary pool by a certain percentage or a particular dollar amount, then in the following year, you're going to have to do a crazy redistribution. Which admin person, it goes into their default, but which one doesn't, and it's a little bit complicated in that respect. The other thing is, what Kate wanted to know is that if we did do it that way, would we put the salary pool in just one line, or would it simply be a distribution at each school? That was another thing that came up, as well. We can do it either way, but recognize that here, the way that it's done right now, the way that the explanation is that it's last year's salary pool that has been redistributed to where it went. And if you decide to go the other route, then it's simply, we do that redistribution in the default, and then the salary pool becomes quote-unquote new spending. If the budget were to fail and you have a default budget, the board then has to recognize that if you intend to give salary increases to your administrators or your non-collective bargaining agreements, we have many of those as well, you would then have to make cuts in other areas to do that. So just recognize that. It's not, we can do it either way.
Let me ask you this question, Scott. What is the base salary for those individuals for the 2022-23 year? It's not what's showing in the base salary column.
No, it would be the base plus the new.
Right, so I'm
Yes.
just looking at, because we implemented the default budget the way we read it, which is the coming up budget is the same as the previous year's actual. And the previous year's actual isn't what's showing in that column.
understand.
It's just that concept that was bothering me.
And I think we can do it either way.
Now, here's another argument that I haven't convinced myself of yet either.
Okay.
A salary pool, even though it's a redistribution, is also a continuing, ongoing expense year to year to year to year to year to year to year. So, is that a default number?
Technically, it would be, because it's programmatic.
Right.
Agreed.
So, it's not new spending. The same amount from the previous year belongs in the base, as well as the agreed upon redistribution of the prior year. I've been toying with that in my brain for several days as well.
I'd have to toy with that in my brain for
I think I can reconcile.
I understand what you're saying.
And I've been a proponent of doing it the way I believe, and this goes way back in my conversation with Neil Kirk, many years ago, let's say 20 years ago. And because he was in the legislature when this was passed, and my recollection is, it is the components that I've already spoken about, which could possibly include both those numbers. Because it's not a one-time expense.
If you
look
could make
at
that
it.
decision by next Monday,
Yeah,
I will then have a better understanding of what number will go before. I can get, because what you're saying is that I would then be adding the salary pool to the default budget You follow?
Yeah, as well as
Yes.
the actual.
Scott,
And-
maybe for this one item, we could bring in almost like two looks.
I can do that.
And we could, kind of identify, explain the model, and then reconcile which one do we want to choose and move forward with, and just make sure that it's clear and that everyone is in agreement.
Well, I say that because if you go with option B, which is doing that, adding them both, you would have a $68,000, roughly, whatever is in that salary pool would be part of your default. So your new spending would be $68,000 less, and your default would be $68,000 more.
Right, and yes, in that model, I have to step back and I say, okay, so as I argued for having that as an ongoing programmatic thing, was it a one-year expenditure, the prior year? The distribution of that to all those other lines? Is that a one-year expense? Is a one-time
No,
expense?
because it's reoccurring.
I would think it is reoccurring.
And then what would be new
Answer the
would
question,
be
yeah.
if the pool were increased.
Increased.
So
If you-
we increased the pool by $2,500.
That's new stuff.
That's
I mean,
new.
And that is the same, I tried to do the argument, because I did the same thing with power and electricity. The way we're doing it right now, it's the same amount. It's the financial fiscal amount. So why should it be any different because we're talking about salaries, even though the salaries aren't there yet? Doesn't mean we have to
The
spend
only
it.
thing that's different with energy is you could also make the argument, and again, as
Oh, we
we've
can.
discussed,
Yeah.
that it's more based on the unit of energy as
Yeah.
opposed, so gallons.
Yep.
The gallons are the gallons of propane are fixed,
But
the
they-
price fluctuates.
But hang on for a second.
And remember, that's not the way we do it.
Well, the
But that-
law
that
also
is another
doesn't
way
say
that
gallons. The
can be
law
doing it.
says the amount of obligation. And the obligation is the money that you obligated the money, the cash flow,
We don't
not the
do it
gallons.
this way, but I'm telling you, there are
Right.
school districts
Oh,
and
they have.
municipalities
The-
across
yes,
the
I
state
know.
that this is exactly how they do it.
And just
And it would
so you
be-
know,
It would be
my-
to our benefit to do this, but we don't because that's not how we interpret the
Some
statute.
of my peers, a lot of my peers, refer to a statute that says that we have an obligation to.
Have an appropriate learning environment, which means
Right.
you gotta keep
So
the heat
they're
on, you
saying
gotta
that,
keep the
hey,
lights on.
you need to have a proper learning environment by law, and that requires you to heat it, provide the electricity, et cetera. So if those
Well-
costs go up, that's part of the cost of doing business.
And
So-
that means there is not a default budget, because the default budget was passed after that law was
Yeah,
passed.
so I'm Dan,
We
you and I
just
are on
go
the same
through it
page
again.
in this one,
Yeah,
so,
yeah. But
um,
I totally understand.
yeah.
We've been going through the arguments forever, but I want to apply the same principle that we're applying to that salary
All right,
pool, whether I agree with it or not.
I'm going to provide you on Monday night.
Okay.
With two of those budget overview sheets.
Okay.
Perfect.
One of those overview sheets will be option A, and that
Yep.
is the way that we've done it here. And then the option B is gonna be putting in the salary pool, the distributions and the salary pool into the default, and then anything new in the salary pool would be in the new column.
Yep.
Okay.
So you've got both, and then, but I just need action on it, because I gotta then
Yeah.
Right, well,
make the
We'll need
corrections.
to choose.
You
Yeah.
gotta pick one, and,
We vote Monday night.
and
We vote Monday
recognize the
night.
fact that this is what, the budget that gets put to the budget committee, and the default is on you. Not
Right.
on me, not on the superintendent or the assistant
Right.
superintendents. It's the
Yeah.
board's decision.
Yep.
So our job is to give you, to
Options.
lay it all out,
Yep.
and then you're the ones who decide what it is.
So if you can get that to board members before
Oh, yeah,
Monday?
I can get it to you.
So that we can look at it?
Yeah, that's.
Jared, did you have?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Brian, this might be a difficult question, but for our administrators and other non-union individuals, do they have a multi-year contract? Do any of them have multi-year contracts?
No.
So even our principals are year to year, assistant principals?
They are currently. In the past, we have had, do we have, Scott, any multi-year?
No, we
I don't
used to.
think we do.
I think in the past
Over the
we
years,
did.
we have had.
Yeah.
But currently, we don't.
Now, and
That-
keep in
that
mind.
is-
Go a little
however-
further. How does that affect your thought process?
Well, because if we have a multi-year contract, I look at that as an existing obligation that we need to encumber.
but there's another law that says
Can't.
unless the voters
Voters vote.
voted
It's a new-
for
it's
a
a-
multi-year contract,
which-
it's not an obligation and you can get out of it. Yeah, they
Now-
have that.
Jared?
Hold on, processing.
Okay.
Not this, it's this. This means forward.
Yes.
Very
Don't,
sorry.
hurry up.
Watching this. You can see all the gears going.
Yes, you can.
Okay.
So, Dan's absolutely correct. They changed the law 3 years ago. And the only thing that you can encumber in terms of salary obligations, et cetera, is a contract that has been collectively bargained and approved by, and/or approved by the voters. That's it. However, if this board decided that you were going to enter into a multi-year contract with any administrator, you as a board would be legally obligated contractually to provide those salary increases, et cetera, even if the money wasn't in that specific line item in the budget. You'd have to do a budget transfer, you'd have to find a way to get it to them. But it's not something that would be part of the default budget.
So I thought we were obligated to put the out in contracts, which means if appropriations aren't voted on by the public, this contracts is not binding.
You're
Multi-year.
talking about a non-appropriation clause.
yes.
I am unaware of non-appropriation clauses in employment contracts.
Right, and maybe that's something we have to.
That would be a legal
check.
opinion.
Yes.
We certainly do it for grant-funded employees,
Yeah.
because
so-
if the grant money does not exist, there is a clause in their contract.
And it
So-
isn't our negotiating.
We would have to take a peek at that to find out what's up, because I don't think this year's board can obligate next
Future-
year's board.
future boards.
Future boards. And that's been, I think there's a couple of court cases on that, but our new attorney should be able to know that, just like.
All right, so are we all set with the budget process for Monday, what everybody needs to do? All
Do
right.
you have non-public?
Nope, is there other business that may legally come before the meeting?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
Just real quick.
yep.
And it might sound trivial, but I know it's something this community has always loved. Maple and Bartlett used to do a parade through the village.
Still do, they are.
They don't go through the village the last several years.
Well, it's split. So Bartlett is staying in the Pinardville area, and they do
Which
a
is fine.
parade over, and they kind of go over towards Surratt Field.
Yeah.
And Maple Ave still does the, it's kind of
But
sort
they're
of
not
the,
going through the village. They haven't through COVID, and they didn't do it last year, or.
Are they doing it this year through the town?
they
They
have,
used to- they
they have
just go
already
up
submitted.
Smith
Yeah,
Street and
they
back.
did that last year.
They have already done their parade application. I have no objection to them going through the village. I'm happy to speak to the police chief. I don't know exactly what Mrs. Pishka has proposed.
I don't know what it's happened. I just know that it was something that all the businesses in town and the people in the community loved and looked forward to that event. It was a school reaching out to the community. It was a shared enjoyment together.
Right, the high school band would come.
Right, yeah, sometimes the high school band was part of it. I'd hate to see that get lost, because it was something highly valued in our community.
Yeah, and remember, was it 2 years ago, Halloween got canceled?
Oh, I
So,
know.
I mean, you know,
And
things have
The switch happened
Right.
for COVID, but I know
Right.
last year, they, again, didn't do it.
Right.
So I wanted to raise that and say, can we go back to doing that community kind of thing?
And it might have been a safety thing, not
I have no
having the
idea.
kids around
I
a
have no
huge
idea.
crowd, too. So-
Or
So-
giving a reason for huge crowds to be,
Yes.
but again, we're
Yep.
moving on.
I just wanted to raise that because I remember way back when the board considered not allowing the parade, and the community was in an uprising. So,
Right,
Because
right.
they look forward to it so much.
Yep.
So,
Okay, so we don't have non-public, so Monday at 6 again.
Move to adjourn?
All
Can I do
right,
that?
yep, we can. So
Second.
motion by Ellen, do I have a second?
Yep.
By Dan.
I wasn't gonna say
Shane did it.
anything. 'cause
It
I
wasn't me,
wearing-
sorry.
So,
Shane
took
seconded
care of
it.
it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, guys. Have a good weekend.